Late September. The long, sweltering summer had finally passed. Autumn was here, but the weather in Jiangbei City refused to let up. Daytime temperatures still hovered above 30 degrees Celsius. At night, however, it would suddenly drop, turning so cold it made people shiver. Almost everyone was complaining about this damn weather. In an inconspicuous rented room in the southern part of the city, the air conditioner hummed endlessly, creating an annoying, noisy drone. Beneath the AC unit was a tiny room of about 15 square meters. The living room and bed were crammed into the same space, with the bathroom and kitchen right next to each other. Though small, everything was neatly arranged. I'm Jiang Lushir, a bit on the skinny side. I was sitting on the bunk bed, staring intently at the TV in front of me. The screen was broadcasting the national network's noon news. A week ago, I had never used this TV for anything other than watching soccer, let alone sitting down for the noon news. But things were different now. Not only was I breaking my routine by sitting in front of the screen, but I was also hyper-focused on the clock. Because at exactly 12:45 and 51 seconds p.m. today, this news program would broadcast an incredibly important piece of information. Next up is international news. An international team of scientists has just held a press conference, announcing the discovery of a giant supervirus in the permafrost of the Siberian Far East. This is the fourth giant supervirus known to humanity. Previously, scientists had discovered another giant virus in this region. The new virus was actually found a year ago, but it's only being officially announced now. Scientists are still studying it and have yet to determine whether it can infect humans or animals. Some experts suggest that as long as the permafrost doesn't melt, there's no need to worry too much about its existence. This is it. I sprang up from the bed, looking down at my phone to check the time. Around 12:45. Barely a second off. Right on the money again. This was the third time. I stared at the TV screen, but my mind was no longer on the broadcast. I already knew this. I even knew the exact moment it would be announced. Right now, this was a live press conference. There was no way the information could have been leaked beforehand. Even if the media and reporters knew a day in advance that there would be a press conference, they absolutely couldn't have known the specific details. Yet, I knew it beforehand. Not just this news, but a whole series of sudden international events over the past week. I knew about all of them before they happened. It wasn't because I suddenly gained the ability to predict the future, but because a week ago, something called a starseed appeared in my head. The moment I discovered it, I received a specific amount of information, including news that hadn't even happened yet. The most important piece of information was that the news about this giant supervirus would go public today. Because once this news was confirmed, it meant another event I learned from the starseed would also become reality. The outbreak. The apocalypse was coming. The previous news had only revolved around certain heads of state being absent from major events, international summits being canceled, or sudden suspensions of diplomatic tours. Those things weren't enough to catch the public's attention. But I knew very well that many countries had long grasped the reality of the outbreak and were secretly preparing to evacuate. The virus spread at a terrifying speed, and no measures were enough to contain it. If they went public too early, it would only cause mass panic and societal collapse. So everyone went about their normal lives, completely unaware that certain important figures had quietly vanished. This press conference about the virus was the final shred of mercy the highest echelons of power showed the public. At least they wouldn't die in total ignorance. 10 days from now, at exactly 2 p.m., disaster would suddenly strike these ordinary people. People who were just like me, sitting in front of the TV watching the news without a clue about what was coming. Many would just scroll through Weibo, read the news, gasp in surprise, and casually share it. I had absolutely no intention of posting the truth online. Ever since the Mayan prophecies spread, doomsday theories had become so saturated, with books and movies on the subject everywhere, that the public was completely immune to them. My post wouldn't attract anyone's attention. The only thing I'd get in return was unnecessary trouble. I didn't want to do something pointless and bring trouble upon myself. Even I couldn't believe it immediately when I first received this information. The world around me was still so normal. How could anyone believe the apocalypse was coming? But now, with everything confirmed, I understood perfectly well. I only had exactly 1 week left to prepare. I started by ordering a massive amount of food and daily necessities. from rice, cooking oil, and high-energy compressed biscuits to drinking water and first aid supplies. Everything was delivered within a day or two, saving me a lot of time. Besides that, I also bought jackets, lightweight ropes, disposable underwear, and even found a local seller to buy a dagger, just in case of an emergency. Even though I had never believed in the apocalypse before, out of curiosity, I had scoured the internet for all sorts of related articles and compiled a list of essential survival items. I never expected those articles I once deemed useless to actually come in handy now, helping me prepare everything systematically and efficiently. After completing the basic preparations, I moved on to the most important part. The starseed's function didn't just stop at warning me about the apocalypse. More importantly, it could help an ordinary person like me gain the ability to protect myself in the coming chaos. The core ability of the starseed was upgrading and modifying machinery. But to do that, it needed specific materials and a target. The first thing that came to mind was a vehicle, specifically a car. Given my current situation, this was the most practical choice with the lowest modification difficulty. Among the types of vehicles, sedans were eliminated right off the bat. They were too fragile and practically worthless when the world descended into chaos. According to Doomsday articles, the most frequently mentioned vehicles were off-road SUVs. But I wasn't too interested in those either, because the interior space was too cramped. Subjectively, my favorites were those massive, ultra-long heavy trucks, the kind that looked like a train running on the highway, with tires as tall as a person. It's a pity those trucks were too rare. I could only dream about them. After searching the internet over and over, I finally narrowed it down to two options: a container truck or a medium-sized minibus. Because I valued interior space so much, I decided to go with the minibus. It had a much more spacious cabin, but reality quickly poured a bucket of cold water on me. A decent minibus cost tens of thousands of dollars, which I absolutely couldn't afford. After buying all the survival supplies, my bank account balance was down to less than $50. Calling me broke wouldn't even begin to cover it. If I had a house to sell, I would have sold it cheap a long time ago. But that house was sold back when I was in high school. Back then, my parents passed away suddenly. To maintain a living and pay for my and my sister's education, selling the house was the only option. Since then, the two of us had been living in rented apartments. The money in my bank account was mostly what was left from selling the house, slowly spent over the years. And after the shopping spree, it was practically drained. Even if I sold my TV, computer, and other electronics, I'd only get a few $100. Still nowhere near enough. As for robbing or stealing, as an ordinary college student, I estimated my chances of success at less than 10%. And even if I succeeded, the probability of getting caught was over 80%. I didn't plan on buying a vehicle, but rather renting one. Yet, even renting required a hefty sum of money. I had checked the prices online beforehand. A regular minibus would cost over $50 a day. Renting it for 10 days would be around $500, not to mention I still had to buy a ton of materials and metals for the modifications. This financial gap was really giving me a headache. Doomsday would hit next Tuesday. Time was running out. Lying on my bed, I took a few deep breaths but still felt a deep sense of unease. As an ordinary college student facing an imminent life or death trial, telling me to stay completely calm was obviously impossible. After thinking for a moment, I opened QQ and found the ID of my roommate. Lee Jun. Seeing his icon lit up, I messaged him. "Lee Jun, you there?" Very quickly, a beep beep sounded. A reply popped up in the chat box. "See my new status yet?" Only then did I notice the text under his ID. iPhone 12 online. It was no surprise Lee Jun was flaunting his online status so smugly. The iPhone 12 was the newest model released this month. It was ridiculously expensive, and very few could afford it. Getting his hands on it this early was definitely something for him to brag about. This phone costs over $1,000, I thought to myself with a sigh. To me, that was an item completely out of reach. I never expected that the apocalypse would arrive before I even got to hold a new-gen smartphone. Lee Jun immediately replied with sheer arrogance. $1,000? That's only if you can get the first batch. I had someone buy it for me. Cost an extra $300. A $1,300 phone. Just thinking about it made me dizzy. My parents died when I was young, and I had to take care of my sister. Life had always been frugal. That recent supply run was the first time I had ever spent money so freely. Realizing Li Jun seemed to have plenty of cash to spare, I quickly typed, "Let's talk business. I have something to ask. Do you have any plans for next Tuesday?" "Next Tuesday? Let me think. Oh right, I scored a date with a new chick I met on WeChat. Taking her to a bar that day. After a few drinks. Well, you know the drill." Hearing this just gave me a headache. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to be blunt. "Next Tuesday, I'm planning to invite everyone to stay in the dorm and play games. We'll lock the windows tight." "What do you say?" "What?" Li Jun almost couldn't believe his ears. "You want me to ditch a girl to stay in the dorm and play games with you? Are you out of your mind?" Immediately after came a decisive reply, "Not playing. I'm busy." "Fine." I sighed and shook my head. I had tried to warn him. Honestly, even if he stayed in the dorm and locked the windows, he couldn't avoid the virus outbreak. Right now, Li Jun, just like everyone else, already carried the virus in his body. Whether he'd turn into a monster in 10 days depended entirely on his own constitution. Locking the windows was just a precaution so that if he was lucky enough to survive the ordeal, he wouldn't be attacked by the monsters outside. Seeing that he wouldn't listen, I had no other choice but to continue. "Li Jun, I'm in desperate need of money. Can you pay me back that $100 first?" "Oh, the money? Don't worry, I remember. I'll pay you back in a few days," Li Jun replied dismissively. I frowned. I really need it urgently. This is life-saving money. "That urgent, huh? Hold on. That chick is calling me. Let me take this." After saying that, he stopped replying. His online icon went dark. I shook my head, thought for a moment, and opened a chat with another roommate, Luo Ming. "Can you lend me $100? Luo Ming replied very quickly, "I'm broke lately. All my living expenses went into games. I was actually planning to borrow some food money from you. What do you need it for?" "It's fine." I knew Luo Ming's personality well. His family was well off, but he was always out of cash. Asking him was just trying my luck. I still added a reminder. "Remember what I'm telling you. Next Tuesday, stay in the dorm and play games. Lock the windows tight. Don't go out." "What's going on?" Luo Ming asked, surprised. "Just remember it." I typed, then logged off. I had done my best. The guy who owed me money wouldn't pay. The guy I could borrow from didn't have any. As for the others, we either weren't close, or they were just as broke. We were just college students, after all. A few bucks was manageable, but a few hundred was practically impossible to expect. Looks like I have to think of another way. I held my phone, scrolling back and forth. My eyes suddenly stopped on a very flashy avatar. My heart gave a slight jolt. The profile picture was a guy with slicked back hair wearing sunglasses. The display name was manhwa, a fairly well-known figure on campus. He wasn't famous for being a good student or having any talents, but for his incredibly wide network of connections. So wide that even I had added him on QQ at some point. To say manhwa and I were polar opposites wouldn't be entirely accurate, but we were definitely worlds apart. I was just an ordinary student, quiet and not very outgoing. Outside of my classmates, almost no one knew me. I vaguely remembered Li Jun mentioning that manhwa had a friend who ran a loan shark business on campus. Some girls, desperate for money, would send not only their ID cards and student IDs, but even explicit photos as collateral. If they couldn't pay up, their photos and personal info would be leaked to their friends, teachers, and even their families. When I first heard about this, I found it baffling. Most of those girls borrowed money just to shop and satisfy their vanity, ultimately driving themselves into a dead end. manhwa would even frequently get those explicit photos from his friend and share them in group chats for everyone to judge. Honestly, I didn't feel any pity for those girls. I never thought I'd ever get involved in this kind of shady business. But things were different now. I realized this could be an opportunity. "Manhwa, can I borrow some money from your friend?" I got straight to the point. manhwa replied almost instantly, "Sure. What major? What class?" I snapped a picture of my student ID and sent it over. After verifying it, he asked, "How much do you want to borrow?" $1,000. I didn't hold back. I knew very well this was practically the maximum limit they'd lend to a student. Any more, and I'd definitely be rejected. My family background wasn't a secret. manhwa only needed to ask around a bit to find out. Clearly, manhwa was startled by the amount. $1,000 was a massive sum for a student. Most girls only borrowed a couple hundred, sometimes even less. "What do you need that much for?" "Even if your girlfriend needs an abortion, it wouldn't cost that much," he blurted out. "I have something very important to do." "Don't ask." Just tell me the terms, I replied. Here's the deal. You leave your student ID with me and provide your home address. Plus, you have to write an IOU for $2,500. Record a video holding the IOU, read the contents clearly, and state that you're borrowing the money voluntarily. Once you pay it off, I'll destroy the IOU right in front of you. $1,000. How long do you need it for? 1 month. Then when it's due, you have to pay back $1,250. We go to the same school. I'm not worried about you running off. I swallowed hard. This interest rate, it was even higher than regular loan sharks. I also realized that this so-called friend was probably just an excuse. Even if Ma Hao wasn't running the operation directly, he definitely had a cut in it. But he was incredibly confident, not worried in the slightest that I'd default. Probably because if I didn't pay, he'd make my life a living hell. I chuckled softly. Interest rates? Threats? When the apocalypse actually hits, why the hell would I care about a guy like Ma Hao? That afternoon, I found a car rental company online, then met up with Ma Hao to process the loan. As he was looking down to transfer the money, he curiously sized me up. What exactly are you borrowing this money for? To do something big. You'll know in a week. Ma Hao fell silent, looking at me with suspicion. He probably thought I was a bit crazy. But the transfer was done, and he didn't bother pressing further. So far, no student had ever dared to borrow money from him and not pay it back. With $1,000 in hand, I immediately headed to the car rental company. Minibuses weren't as common as sedans. I had to ask every company online before finding one that still had an available vehicle. The other party even urged me to hurry, as they would only hold the vehicle for a maximum of 2 hours. I rushed over, arriving almost an hour earlier than expected. Seeing the company's signboard from a distance, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The storefront wasn't large, and the decor was simple. Behind the reception desk stood a girl with a sweet face and her hair tied in a ponytail. She wore the company uniform, looking neat and clean. She seemed only 18 or 19, exuding a youthful and pure vibe. She was attending to a customer in a suit. Seeing me walk in, she smiled and nodded, gesturing for me to wait a moment. Looking at this energetic girl, I was a bit surprised. I didn't expect the receptionist here to be so young. I sat down on the sofa to wait and accidentally noticed a corner of an English CT 6 vocabulary book peeking out from under a stack of documents on her desk. I immediately understood. She was probably a college student, maybe even from my university, working part-time here to earn living expenses. This rental company was located near the university district. Hiring a cute female student as a receptionist saved costs and easily attracted customers. Hello, I'm Wen Xiaodian, the customer manager. You can call me Xiaowen. It's a pleasure to serve you. She turned to me after seeing the other customer off. Her youthful appearance combined with her professional tone created a vibe that was both novel and endearing. Hello, I'm the one who booked the minibus online. I stood up. About that. She looked a bit flustered. I'm so sorry. The last minibus was just rented out to this gentleman. When I called, she was the one who took the reservation. But the boss had already rented the vehicle to someone else first. She was just an employee and couldn't make the call. I'm truly sorry. If you can wait, you can place a new reservation now, and we'll have a vehicle in a few days. When this gentleman is done, he'll return it. I'll hold it for you. I can't wait that long. And this is the only company left with an available vehicle. After thinking for a moment, I suddenly asked, has the vehicle been paid for yet? Not yet. We're just about to sign the contract. When Xiaodian looked a bit troubled, the man in the suit glanced at me, a hint of mockery in his eyes. I was late, that was a fact. If it hasn't been paid for, then it's fine. I said slowly. Tell your boss I'll pay an extra $10 a day. I'll rent it for a week and continue renting it next week. I'll only drive it within the city, so there won't be much wear and tear. When Xiaodian froze, turning to look at the man. For a moment, she didn't know how to handle the situation. $15 extra. I added. She hesitated. This wasn't a small amount. According to company policy, I have to call and ask for permission. She said apologetically. No need to call. The man in the suit spoke up. Let the kid rent it. I'm really sorry, sir. If you need a vehicle this weekend, I'll arrange another one for you. When Xiaodian hurriedly apologized, the man looked at me. Seeing that I wasn't even 20 yet, he asked curiously, Young man, what do you need to rent a vehicle for so long? Just to keep it around. I replied, Keep it around? He shook his head, clearly thinking that young people with money just like to do whatever they pleased. I didn't care. I quickly signed the contract. The terms were very strict. Even a tiny scratch would result in a heavy penalty. I just skimmed it and signed immediately. This vehicle isn't just going to get a simple scratch. You need to leave your ID card. The employee smiled and said. I placed my prepared ID card on the desk and took the car keys. After taking a few steps out, I turned back. Can you help me find a driver? I don't have a driver's license. Sitting in the minibus, I held my phone and called my sister. Even though I knew in my heart that this call was probably like throwing a stone into the ocean. Before the starseed appeared in my head with all that information, my sister had gone deep into the mountains for a field survey, where the cell signal was spotty at best. The fact that she was deep in the mountains right when the apocalypse was about to erupt was truly terrible news. But at least I knew from the starseed that neither my sister nor I would be infected by the virus. Her survey would probably end in the next day or two. This brought me a lot of relief. My sister and I grew up together, practically relying on each other to survive. If the apocalypse hit and my sister was still missing somewhere in the wilderness, I knew for a fact I would go insane. Sure enough, her phone was still turned off. I left a text message, telling her to contact me immediately the moment she got a signal. I told her I'd keep my phone on 24/7 waiting for her call. Knowing my sister's personality, as long as she saw how serious I was, she'd definitely call back the second she had reception. Boss, stop here, right? The rental company's driver parked below my apartment building, his eyes curiously scanning the surroundings. This was just an old, rundown residential area in Jiangbei City. The buildings were from the 90s, with outdated rain awnings and old-fashioned anti-theft grills. This place didn't look like the home of a rich kid at all. He probably thought I just wanted to experience the commoner lifestyle. But that had nothing to do with him. After I signed off, he handed over the keys and left. I sat alone in the vehicle, letting out a long breath. Today, I had been running around everywhere, preparing all sorts of things. But now that everything was done, I didn't feel relieved at all. On the contrary, I was even more anxious than before. The forced calmness from earlier and the suppressed fear seemed to surge up all at once. After sitting still for about 5 or 6 minutes, I gradually regained my composure. After all, the apocalypse was coming. Having this kind of reaction was completely normal. Following the information from the starseed, I stood up, walked over to the driver's seat, sat down, and gripped the steering wheel tightly. Then, I closed my eyes. Like flipping an invisible switch, images that should only be seen with my eyes instantly appeared in my mind. First was the image of the steering wheel I was holding. Then, my vision quickly swept to both sides before suddenly elevating, encompassing the entire vehicle. Next, the vehicle's body gradually became transparent, and every internal component appeared clearly. I knew this was the starseed scanning the vehicle. Even though I was mentally prepared, experiencing it firsthand still felt incredibly miraculous. It was like living in a sci-fi world, far surpassing any VR experience. I used to be really interested in VR, but it was too expensive, so I never bought one. I never expected to get an even more realistic experience now. Once the entire minibus was scanned, detailed information popped up in my mind. This was a 14-seater, medium-sized passenger bus. 10 years old. Gasoline engine. Maximum speed of 110 kilometers per hour. Engine displacement of over 5 liters. Water-cooled, inline 4-cylinder, turbocharged fuel injection system. The overall condition was quite old. The engine was worn out, and the other parts weren't new either. In short, this was a very ordinary vehicle. It had probably been used for tour groups before being bought by the rental company. This kind of vehicle would pop up with all sorts of issues the moment you started it. Clearly, the rental company didn't have much of a conscience. But to me, those problems didn't matter at all. I spent over $500 to get this vehicle. That was already a massive steal. After completing the first stage of modification, this vehicle would begin adapting to the apocalyptic environment. The starseed offered many different modification paths. I thought for a moment and chose the mobile base option. This was the most material-intensive option, but also the most practical one. Immediately after, the starseed listed the materials needed to modify the vehicle into a standard mobile base. Just looking at it made me dizzy. 100 kilograms of steel, 100 kilograms of copper, all sorts of screws and bolts, 10 kilograms of titanium alloy, 10 square feet of leather, along with a whole bunch of other bizarre materials. Setting aside the rest, I knew titanium alloy alone cost around 20 to 30 bucks a kilo. And those other materials with expensive-sounding names definitely wouldn't be cheap. This list far exceeded my expectations, both in quantity and cost. Probably because I chose the more complex mobile base option. The money I had left, plus whatever I could get from selling my other belongings, might not even be enough. The streets were littered with flyers advertising instant cash transfers, ID card only. But my student ID was held by manhwa, and my ID card was at the rental company. I didn't have a single piece of identification left to use as collateral. Thinking about this, I really didn't know what to do. Well, I'll just buy whatever I can first. I picked up my phone. As soon as I unlocked the screen, I noticed 2 missed calls. Looking at the time, it was probably when I was driving and didn't hear it. But I didn't recognize this number. Hello? I called back. Jiang Lucia? A girl's voice came from the other end. Very sweet and gentle. It's me. I saw you called me. Is something wrong? I'm Li Yusin. That name made me freeze. At first, I thought it was a business call, maybe from the rental company or some store. I didn't expect it to be an acquaintance, and a very popular girl at that. I wasn't awkward enough to freeze up just talking to a girl on the phone, but it felt strange. Li Yusin and I were never close. Why would she call me? But strictly speaking, it wasn't like we had zero connection. We had been classmates since high school, even in the same class, sharing the same desk. Li Yusin came from a very good family. She was pretty and had a gentle personality, so she was always the center of attention. Back then, I had often found myself staring blankly at her soft side profile as she sat by the window, her hair swaying gently in the breeze, an image I still remembered vividly to this day. However, even though Li Yusin excelled in almost everything, she struggled terribly with math. Meanwhile, math was my strongest subject. Because of that, back in school, she frequently asked me to tutor her. Every time I explained a problem, she would listen so seriously and intently that sometimes her soft hair would slip down and brush against my hand without her even noticing. Not long after that, my parents died in an accident. I had to take a full month off from school. When I returned, I had become much quieter and more withdrawn, voluntarily moving to the very last row. Even though Li Yusin still occasionally glanced my way, and many times when we passed each other she seemed to want to say something, she never opened her mouth. Now, I had overcome the shadows of the past, but our relationship had faded since then. Even though we both got into a university in the same city, we rarely kept in touch. Those gentle flutters of my high school days were quietly buried deep in my heart. Now, hearing Li Yusin's voice again, my heart couldn't help but stir. Her voice was still as gentle as ever, like a passing breeze. Wow, it's been a long time. I couldn't help but sigh. It really has. Li Yusin replied. Oh right, did you need something? I asked. I heard Li Jun say you're really short on money. I'm not very close to him, but I happened to overhear him talking to a friend of mine. Li Yusin said directly. I immediately frowned. What did he say? He asked my friend out to eat. My friend asked why he kept looking at his phone and who he was talking to. He said you were begging for a loan. I figured you must be in trouble, so I asked for your number. This guy Li Jun. I really didn't know what to say. Not paying me back was one thing, but talking trash behind my back? Here's the situation. I explained my circumstances in detail. Hearing this, Li Yusin was clearly very angry. I knew you weren't that kind of person. He even said you were shamelessly pestering him. That's too much. That kind of person. I'll tell my friend to never hang out with him again. But, are you really short on money? It's fine. I figured something out. I replied. Is your Alipay account linked to this phone number? I'll transfer some money to you. Just use it for now, and pay me back whenever it's convenient. We're friends, don't be a stranger. Back then, you tutored me every single day. You explained everything so thoroughly that you barely had any free time left, and I never even thanked you properly. Li Yusin chuckled softly. I paused. Her laugh was still as gentle as ever. Wait, you don't have to. Let's just do this. Don't feel bad, we're friends, right? Her voice was as light as wind chimes. Of course. I put the phone down, suddenly feeling a warmth in my heart. I truly never expected that in my most difficult moment, the person to help me would be someone like her. Furthermore, from start to finish, she never asked what I needed the money for. Ding ding. My phone buzzed. I opened it, and was instantly stunned. The amount she transferred to me was $1,000. Along with it was a message. I sent a bit extra so it's easier for you to manage. If you don't use it all, just keep it and pay me back later. At the end of the message was a cute smiley face emoji. Looking at those words, I was truly moved. Lee Yusin's family was well off, but she lived very simply. $1,000 definitely wasn't a small amount. It was her savings. Yet, just hearing that I was in trouble, she took the initiative to call, and when I didn't pick up, she called back multiple times. I immediately called her back. When she answered, her voice sounded a bit anxious. "Why are you calling back?" I couldn't help but laugh, feeling both touched and amused. "Don't worry, I'm not calling to return the money." "Oh, that's good." She breathed a sigh of relief, then quickly added, "But don't thank me either. If you thank me, then I have to thank you for helping me study back then. Without you, how could I have gotten into Jiangbei University?" It was nothing. I felt a bit embarrassed, scratching my head. Then I cleared my throat and said seriously, "Yusin, give me your home address." "Home address? Are you planning to come over and pay me back in person?" she asked with a laugh. "Don't ask why, just give it to me. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything bad." I joked intentionally. "All right, my address is." "Go ahead, I'm writing it down." I put her on speaker and typed the address into my notes. "You're actually writing it down? Now I'm getting worried. Are you really planning to come over? But if you do, I'd be very happy." Her voice carried a hint of shyness. I knew this request was a bit abrupt, but I had no other choice. It's hard to explain, but this is crucial. "Yusin, next Tuesday, you absolutely must stay home and wait for me. Not just you, but your parents have to stay home too. Don't go anywhere. It's best if everyone stays in their own separate rooms, and every door must be locked. If anything unexpected happens, lock the doors immediately. Absolutely do not go outside. I will come find you guys, okay? This is a matter of life and death for me." My tone was dead serious, almost forceful. I knew very well that if I talked about the apocalypse, she'd find it hard to believe. And even if she did, convincing her parents would be even harder. They might even think I was crazy. "Lock the doors and stay in our rooms." Lee Yusin was stunned. "Are you in some kind of huge trouble? Does it have to do with loan sharks or the mafia?" "No, but it's incredibly important. You have to trust me. You must trust me. Please. This. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "All right. You must do exactly as I say. Please, promise me." "I promise." After hanging up, I let out a long breath. I had done my best. I didn't know how much she would actually follow through, but at least she would stay home. She was a very kind person. Just thinking about my safety, she would definitely listen. As for whether Lee Yusin could survive, I could only leave it up to fate. I just hoped God wouldn't be cruel enough to let such a good girl die in this disaster. And as long as she was alive, I firmly believed that I would definitely find her. Thanks to the money Lee Yusin lent me, I immediately started shopping. I ordered everything I could online. For the materials I couldn't buy online, I had to run to the markets myself. There was one type of material that even the markets didn't have. In the end, I was forced to go directly to an auto parts factory to buy it. At first, the boss absolutely refused to sell. Finally, I gritted my teeth and paid an extra $20 over the original price just to get it, and it was still secondhand. As I left, watching him carefully count every single bill, I could only shake my head. It wasn't that he didn't want to sell, he just wanted a higher price. Right now, making an extra $20 made him very happy. But a week from now, he'd realized that money had lost all its value. 3 days passed, and all the materials were finally gathered, packed tightly into the minibus, filling up the aisles and seats. When I placed the final bundle of materials down, it felt like a massive boulder had finally been lifted off my chest. Finally, just in time. Over these 3 days, I had practically run all over Jiangbei City. Probably because this was the first modification, the required materials were both numerous and complex. I needed almost everything. During this time, I kept a close eye on the news and the situation in the city. Everything outside still looked normal, but the frequency of major figures appearing on the news was decreasing day by day. As for me, I could clearly feel an undercurrent of unease spreading everywhere. Let's begin. I pulled down the curtains, sat in the driver's seat, took a deep breath to steady my breathing, and placed my hands on the steering wheel. Instantly, the structure of the medium-sized minibus appeared clearly in my mind. It was as if I had gained an invisible eye scanning the entire vehicle. Wherever I looked, the data and condition of that component immediately popped up. Current vehicle status, mobile base, standard edition, pending modification. Sufficient materials detected. Initiate modification. I replied in my mind, initiate. Modification initiated. Completion time, 72 hours. Countdown starting now. During the modification period, the vehicle cannot be moved. Modification contents include. I just felt the steering wheel in my hands vibrate slightly, as if a strange power had just awakened. The modification time was too long. I couldn't sit in the vehicle monitoring it forever. I watched curiously for a while and noticed that bundles of materials would occasionally disappear inexplicably. Other than that, there was nothing unusual. Then I stepped out of the vehicle and looked at it from the outside. The minibus looked exactly the same, with no obvious changes. Only then did I feel at ease enough to head back home. As soon as I opened the door, I saw that the apartment was almost completely filled with all sorts of supplies, all delivered over the past 3 days. The delivery guys had looked at me with eyes full of suspicion, but I didn't care. No matter how weird they thought it was, they could never guess what I was preparing for. For these past 3 days, I hadn't gone to school either. The apocalypse was coming. What was the point of going to class? While the minibus modification had begun, I didn't just sit idle. I continuously called my sister while looking up all kinds of survival knowledge online, from wilderness survival skills to basic first aid, common medications, and thoroughly studying the maps of the surrounding areas. I even downloaded a national map onto my tablet, ensuring I could use it even without an internet connection. This map was so detailed that it marked almost everything, from small shops and large factories to national highways and remote village roads. I had to spend over $20 to buy it, because free apps simply didn't have this level of detail. I didn't know how much I could prepare, but anything I found useful, and anything I could think of, I tried my best to get ready. By now, my money was almost completely gone, and the preparations were mostly finished. Ring, ring, ring. My phone suddenly rang. I quickly looked at the screen, and in an instant, a look of joy washed over my face. I had called my sister countless times, but her phone was always off. Finally, she was calling back. Hello? Hello? Bro, what's the emergency? I just got off the bus. Let me tell you, this field trip was so interesting. We even went to a village that practices cave burials. Jiang Zhuiying, stop talking and listen to me first. I interrupted, my voice louder than usual. Perhaps sensing the seriousness in my tone, my sister immediately stopped and replied softly, Go ahead. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. Panicking would only make her scared too. Zhuiying, where are you right now? I'm at school. I just split up with the teachers and classmates from the survey team, and I'm heading back to the dorm. My phone died, and I only turned it on and saw your messages after charging it on the bus. Although Zhuiying was usually quite mischievous, when she realized something was wrong, she spoke very clearly and coherently. Ever since our parents passed away, I had always been the one taking care of her. Even though we often bickered, in crucial moments, she always trusted me unconditionally. Don't go back to the dorm right now. Book a flight home immediately, I said. Okay, wait a sec. A moment later, her voice came through. Bro, there are no tickets left. What about tomorrow? The day after? If there are no direct flights, book a layover. The price doesn't matter. There aren't any. They're all sold out. My heart sank. I immediately opened a ticketing website, searching from one city to another. The more I looked, the heavier my heart became. All flights for the next 3 days were completely sold out. The only available flights were after the apocalypse. This was absolutely no coincidence. Bro, how about I buy a ticket for 3 days from now? Zhuiying asked. By then, it won't mean anything anymore. She didn't seem to understand, but she didn't ask further. A moment later, she spoke again. What about the train? Should I book a train ticket? I typed a few more keys, my voice dropping significantly. No need. Train tickets are sold out too. Every single train ticket for the next 3 days was gone, not a single seat left. Bro, let me go to the bus station and ask, or I can hire a private car. No need. I immediately cut her off. Even if the traffic is clear, traveling by road will take over 2 days. With the current situation, traffic jams were a certainty. If she got stuck halfway, she wouldn't have a chance of surviving. Don't bother. I emphasized. Zhu Ying clearly sensed the abnormality, and her voice grew anxious. Zhu Ying, listen to me very carefully right now, I said slowly but firmly. Don't go back to the dorm. Find a place with few people and good security. A hotel, an apartment, or a guest house. Any of them will do. Then buy as much drinking water as possible. Medicine, daily necessities, food. Charge your phone, buy extra power banks. Lock the door tight. Don't go out, and wait for me to come. You absolutely must wait for me. Absolutely. I paused for a second, then said the final thing. Zhu Ying, the apocalypse is coming. The fact that Zhu Ying couldn't return was a massive blow, completely upending my original plan. Previously, I had planned that once the minibus modification was complete, I would drive it, loaded with a massive amount of supplies, and take Zhu Ying and Li Yuhan's family out of Jiangbei City, heading straight to a resort over 100 miles away. That was a place I had visited once. It was a sparsely populated area, but had full facilities. There were no residents living nearby. As long as I temporarily settled there, I could slowly observe the situation before deciding my next move. Even though I knew the apocalypse was coming, I still didn't know what the world would turn into afterward. I could only adapt flexibly based on the actual situation. Regardless, with this minibus, our chances of survival on the move were much higher than ordinary people. But now, that plan was clearly scrapped. Not only could I not immediately leave the city area, but I was also forced to head to Nanjing, a much more populated and developed city. Furthermore, the conditions on the road were completely unknown. I didn't know when I'd be able to get there. So I could only grit my teeth and tell Zhu Ying to buy as many supplies as possible, and she absolutely had to wait for me to arrive. If it weren't for the fact that the minibus still needed 3 more days to finish its modifications, I would have wanted to hit the road immediately. But I knew very well that without this vehicle, I was just an ordinary college student, completely incapable of getting Zhu Ying out of the danger zone. That night, Zhu Ying sent me a location pin. She had rented a teacher's apartment on the 6th floor of a building in a small alley near her school. She even sent a picture. 2 rooms packed with supplies, enough to live on for a whole month. Don't worry. Her message even came with a huge smiley face emoji. I had told Zhu Ying about the impending apocalypse. I just didn't mention the starseed in my head. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, but explaining it was too complicated. Plus, there was no need to distract her with it. What surprised me was that Zhu Ying actually believed me. Even facing the imminent apocalypse, she remained calm, even having the mood to take pictures and use emojis. I knew she must still be worried deep down, but this was enough. As long as she listened to me and did what I told her, that was fine. Yeah, don't go out starting today. Lock the windows and doors tight. Protect yourself well. Except for me, do not open the door for anyone, even if it's someone you know. Once the apocalypse truly begins, there will be no laws or morals left to stop the insane actions of humanity. Even if it felt a bit cold-blooded, I still had to warn her thoroughly. I had seen too many scenes in doomsday movies where people killed each other over a single pack of biscuits. And even in real-life wars, people were willing to kill each other for a bit of food. Honestly, I wasn't a cold-blooded monster. Within my capabilities, if I could ensure my own safety, I would still help others. But right now, I wasn't by Zhu Ying's side and couldn't protect her, so I could only demand that she take absolutely no risks. Not even the slightest bit. I know. Seeing my sister obediently listen, I finally felt a bit of relief. As long as Zhu Ying was safe, my next task was figuring out how to get to Nanjing as quickly as possible. 3 days passed by in a flash. During this time, signs of instability began appearing on TV broadcasts. Many reports mentioned traffic issues and the international situation. But for ordinary citizens, these weren't enough to draw attention. They continued their daily lives, going to work, picking up kids, shopping, cooking. I stayed home, occasionally going out to observe the situation. During that time, Li Jun and Luo Ming also sent me a few messages. I didn't even bother reading Li Jun's messages. As for Luo Ming, he texted, "Bro, you good? Did you borrow money to elope with some girl? If you don't come back to school soon, I think you're going to be in big trouble. Remember, don't go out on Tuesday. Just stay in the dorm, lock the doors tight, and play games." I repeated it one more time, unsure if Luo Ming would actually listen. Why does it have to be Tuesday? Yeah, tomorrow is Tuesday. I took a deep breath. That's right, tomorrow was the day. That night, even I didn't know when I fell asleep. Before sleeping, I hired 2 porters to help move all the supplies onto the minibus. Then I sent a mass text to everyone in my contacts, especially reminding Li Yusin and Jiang Zhuing again. In a state of tension and anxiety, I leaned against the pile of materials next to the minibus and gradually drifted off to sleep. Beep, beep, beep. The sound woke me up, but it wasn't an alarm nor a siren. It was a strange sound ringing in my head from the starseat. I immediately snapped my head up and rushed straight to the vehicle's door. From the outside, the vehicle looked no different than before. But the moment my hand touched the door handle, a flood of information regarding the vehicle appeared in my mind. A faint electric current brushed past my fingertips, accompanied by a very soft click. The door opened automatically. It turned out the door had been fitted with an anti-theft sensor system. Only I could open it. Stepping inside, I was so stunned my jaw dropped. I was completely speechless. The interior space had completely transformed. All the materials from before had vanished cleanly. The old rows of seats were now replaced by 2 armchair-like sofas, with a table and shelves nearby. The cabin was divided into several areas, each separated by high-end sliding doors. I opened each door one by one. A small but fully equipped bathroom. A neat kitchen. There was even a small bedroom with a bed that looked incredibly comfortable. After exploring around, I immediately ran to the driver's cabin. This place had also completely changed, separated into its own private space. It was equipped with a large display screen and a modern control panel with all sorts of buttons and levers. I sat down on the soft leather driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly with both hands. At that exact moment, the entire status of the vehicle appeared clearly in my mind. Simultaneously, the buttons around the control panel lit up one by one. The information of the modified vehicle quickly displayed. Mobile base, standard edition, minibus camouflage. Configuration includes 1 bedroom, 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, and a small living room. Equipped weapon, entry-level pneumatic gun, muzzle velocity 810 meters per second, capacity 500 L. Hull durability, F rank, capable of resisting standard bullets and collisions. Gasoline engine, maximum speed 300 kilometers per hour. All malfunctions have been repaired. My heart pounded. The modification results far exceeded my initial expectations. Even so, this was only the standard edition. Its functions were still very limited. If I wanted to truly travel without obstacles, I would need to continue upgrading it. But that meant needing a lot more materials, things I previously didn't have the time, money, or a specific list to prepare for. Regardless, for now, this vehicle had elevated my survival capabilities to a completely different level. I quickly familiarized myself with the controls, then called the 2 porters from last night to help move the remaining supplies onto the vehicle. When they saw the interior space, both of them were dumbfounded. The way they looked at me completely changed. Initially, seeing me living in a tiny rented room packed with food and supplies. They thought I was preparing to open a grocery store or start a small business. They never expected me to own a mobile motorhome. Modifying an old minibus into a motorhome must have seemed both extravagant and a waste of money in their eyes. But I didn't care. Once everything was loaded onto the vehicle, I immediately climbed into the driver's cabin, locked the doors and windows tight, and sat down in the seat. My heart raced as I waited for the moment everything officially began. I didn't know the exact time the disaster would erupt, nor could I imagine how terrifying the scene would be once the virus spread. But I knew one thing very well. From the moment the virus was discovered in the permafrost, it had awakened. This wasn't an ordinary virus. Its infectivity was terrifyingly strong, silently spreading across the globe. And its danger level far surpassed the combined total of all viruses that had ever existed before. It would incubate for an extremely short period, then erupt violently, just like a chain of pre-activated bombs. Ring, ring, ring. The sudden ringing of my phone startled me out of my tense state. I quickly realized it was my phone and hurriedly answered. Glancing at the screen, I saw the caller was Li Yusin. I almost blurted out immediately, "Hello? I'm coming over right now. You absolutely must stay home. Don't go anywhere." My biggest fear was that she wouldn't listen to me. If she was calling to cancel, things would get incredibly complicated. "Zhang Lushi, I'm sorry, I have to leave soon." As soon as Li Yusin's voice rang out, my heart sank. "Leave? Go where?" "Li Yusin, Listen to me. You absolutely must stay home and lock the doors tight. This is about, I said hurriedly, but before I could finish, she cut me off. Jiang Lucier, listen carefully to what I'm saying. Her tone was so serious that I instantly fell silent. You might find this hard to believe, but the apocalypse is coming. It could be in just a few days. I only found out about this today. The car is waiting outside. I have to go right now. Please keep yourself safe, then head to the Shunbei Highway entrance. The military will be there. When you get there, they'll take you to the Shunhai safe zone. Li Yusin lowered her voice, speaking very fast. Remember, you absolutely must get to the highway entrance today. The military is there. They'll protect civilians evacuating. An urgent voice urging her to hurry came from the other end of the line. Li Yusin hurriedly added one last sentence. Jiang Lucier, you must remember, I don't have enough. Then the call cut off. Only the monotonous toot-toot sound remained in the receiver, gradually fading into silence. I held the phone, not lowering my hand for a long time. Sure enough, the evacuation had already begun. Shanghai safe zone, where exactly is that? I thought to myself, feeling both grateful and heavy-hearted. Perhaps Li Yusin guessed I would come looking for her today, which was why she called to warn me. She was still the same as before, always so kind-hearted. But, even if she was taken away, it didn't mean she was truly safe. I knew very well that the virus had already spread everywhere. The scientists probably only discovered its existence after it had already silently spread. The incubation period for this supervirus was very short. In that extremely limited time frame, they had to research it, deduce the possibility of an apocalypse, and then spend even more time reaching a final conclusion. By the time the leaders of humanity realized a disaster was imminent, the time left to implement countermeasures was pitifully short. Under such circumstances, they couldn't save all of humanity. The only thing they could do was protect the elites of mankind. They would build safe zones around the world to ensure the survival of the human race. But before stepping foot into those places, there would undoubtedly be strict purges and quarantines. Perhaps right now, even the scientists didn't dare fully believe their own conclusions, so governments hadn't dared to implement extreme, inhumane measures yet. But once they witnessed the cruelty of the apocalypse with their own eyes, witnessed the terrifying extent of this supervirus, the measures they'd enforce would become incredibly brutal. While I was lost in thought, the two porters who had just received their pay were sitting and resting not far away. They were smoking and glancing at my minibus, whispering to each other. The interior of this vehicle is seriously too high-end. Definitely a rich man's toy. If you threw in a few beautiful girls and drove around traveling everywhere, that'd be the life. They muttered, seemingly imagining themselves driving this vehicle across the world. Sightseeing by day, enjoying life by night. Cooking when hungry, showering when dirty. They could even shower together. Just thinking about it made them ecstatic. But right as they were laughing and talking, one of them suddenly froze. His body swayed, his face flushing an unnatural red. He almost fell to the ground. Hey bro, what's wrong? The other guy quickly supported him. I'm fine. The first guy pushed his hand away, quickly steadying himself. What could possibly be wrong with me? You know how fit I am. After saying that, he even thumped his chest hard twice, his solid muscles clearly visible. Haha, I think you overworked yourself last night, and now you're letting your imagination run wild. So you've gone soft. The two of them laughed loudly, teasing each other with vulgar jokes. But inside the vehicle, I quietly observed everything. I didn't feel the urge to laugh at all. Instead, a bone-chilling cold crept up my spine. I knew very well that the dizziness just now was the initial sign of the virus acting up. The moment the apocalypse officially arrived was probably less than an hour away. The porter was still laughing and talking as if nothing happened, while I sat in the vehicle, my eyes gradually turning cold. I couldn't do anything. If you told me to run him over and kill him, I couldn't do it. Furthermore, if I actually did that, it would instantly cause chaos. While the exact moment of the outbreak was still unconfirmed, such an action would only put me in extreme danger. Let alone me. Even the government was helpless. In the short 1 to 2 hours that followed, a massive catastrophe would undoubtedly erupt across the world. The two porters seemed to have nothing else to do, so they sat under the shade of a tree, smoking. I glanced at my watch. It was 1:20 p.m. I was waiting, silently waiting. When the apocalypse truly began, everyone across the globe would experience an extreme immune response, including me, because we were all already infected with the virus. The only difference was that after this reaction, some people would develop immunity to the virus, while others would turn into monsters. As time ticked by, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, cold sweat beginning to seep from my palms. I kept checking my watch. 2 o'clock, then 2:30, 2:40. Gradually, perhaps because I was focusing too hard, the hands on the watch started to blur. It got worse and worse, until it looked like multiple watch faces were overlapping before my eyes. I was startled. A wave of dizziness hit me hard. A sharp pain pierced my head, and I felt like I had slammed heavily into the steering wheel. Immediately after, a terrifying headache washed over me like a tidal wave. It's here. It's finally here. The virus had erupted. I knew I would survive this outbreak, but the pain was still so intense I almost passed out. At the exact same time, all over the world, countless people were experiencing the same thing. Headaches, hallucinations, convulsions, nosebleeds, fainting. Everyone's reactions varied, but no one escaped the pain, especially those who couldn't resist the virus and began to mutate. Their pain seeped deep into their bones. Many screamed in despair, and those screams no longer sounded human, but like the roars of wild beasts. Crash, bang, boom. On the highways, massive pileups occurred. Hundreds, thousands of cars crashed into one another. Some were crushed into scrap metal by large trucks, the drivers dying gruesomely on the spot. Some people, in their agony, instinctively slammed on the brakes, creating ear-piercing screeches that tore through the sky. Vehicles caught fire, billowing thick black smoke. In factories across the cities, countless accidents happened simultaneously as workers suddenly convulsed and lost consciousness, leading to massive fires, explosions, and mass casualties. Fire alarms blared everywhere. Accidents followed one after another. The death toll was uncountable. As for me, I had fallen into a state of delirium. I could only vaguely hear chaotic sounds, but I couldn't distinguish what they were at all. Hallucinations continuously flashed through my mind. I felt like I had returned to my childhood, when my parents were still alive. The whole family gathered together, with a birthday cake my mom had spent a long time preparing right in front of me. Later, I even saw myself getting married, living happily with my wife and kids. And that wife bore a resemblance to Lee Yusin. I was immersed in those hallucinations for who knows how long, until I suddenly woke up. I snapped my eyes open, realizing my hair and clothes were drenched in sweat. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel tightly, my fingers pale from exerting force for so long. The windows and doors were locked tight. I felt my entire body go limp, exhausted to the extreme. I panted heavily, looking out the window, and in that moment, an intense wave of fear surged in my heart. Outside the vehicle, the weather had completely changed. A thick fog blanketed everything, as if the whole world had been submerged in a grayish haze. The buildings and roads had all become blurry. The sky was darkening. The air was suffocatingly heavy. From afar, chaotic sirens wailed, piercing my eardrums, making me incredibly uncomfortable. I looked down at my watch. 3:50 p.m. It was still light out. I had only been unconscious for a little over an hour, but it felt like a lifetime had passed. Now I knew for sure. This damn apocalypse had finally arrived. From today onward, I could only drive this vehicle and run to survive. Taking a deep breath, I started the engine and hit the road. The starseed had fully connected with the mobile base. The moment a thought crossed my mind, all information related to the vehicle instantly appeared clearly in my head. As my eyes swept over the control panel, user manuals automatically popped up next to every button and lever. Start. Accelerate. Use weapons. Ram. My driving skills were actually very average. Most of it was just theoretical knowledge I looked up myself. My practical experience consisted of exactly one test drive out of curiosity. I had planned to get a driver's license, but the tuition was too expensive, so I never took formal lessons. Driving a sedan was no big deal, but a minibus was a completely different story. The difficulty gap was obvious. Fortunately, the Starseed didn't just provide operational manuals. It also continuously gave reminders and warnings throughout my driving process. Thanks to that support, even though my head was still a bit groggy from the virus outbreak, I slowly drove the mobile base out of the empty lot. Surrounded by a thick gray fog, the road ahead and to the sides was almost impossible to see clearly. I endured the dull ache in my head, squinting as I carefully observed the path ahead. Just as I was about to merge onto the main road, a dark figure suddenly dashed out from the side, slamming hard against the driver's side door with a heavy thud. I jerked my head around, my heart almost stopping in that instant. A face was pressed flat against the car window. Two hands frantically clawed at the glass and the vehicle's body, as if wanting to tear everything apart to get inside. Half of that face was covered in blood, the mouth and teeth stained crimson. What made my scalp tingle was that this face was very familiar. It was the porter who had fainted earlier. Witnessing a living person turn into a monster right before my eyes, even though I was mentally prepared, still sent a chill down my spine. Moreover, this monster was nothing like the slow-moving zombies in movies. He lunged out incredibly suddenly. His movements were agile, his nails scratching against the car door producing an ear-piercing screech. The continuous heavy thuds proved his strength was no joke. His bloodshot eyes glared wide, unblinking, staring intently at me inside the vehicle. A hoarse growl emanated from his throat. Before I could even recover from the shock, a few more figures appeared from the fog behind him. I instantly snapped back to reality and slammed on the gas. Carried by the momentum, the porter was thrown off, while my mobile base charged straight onto the main road. The scene before me made my blood run cold. Screams and cries for help echoed everywhere. The living fled in panic, while the mutants pursued them relentlessly. Just as I merged onto the main road, a man ran straight toward my vehicle, his eyes filled with despair. The moment he saw me in the driver's seat of the minibus, he screamed, "Save me." But just as he reached his hand out, a figure in a suit suddenly lunged from behind a nearby car, tackling him to the ground. A piercing scream rang out. Blood splattered everywhere. The man in the suit raised his head, revealing a twisted, ferocious face and bloodshot eyes. In the blink of an eye, over a dozen mutants rushed over, swarming the man who had just fallen. Only a single arm remained raised high, struggling in despair. But less than a second later, the cries for help completely vanished. Blood pooled across the street. Scenes like this were happening everywhere. This was the first time I had witnessed someone being torn apart right in front of my eyes. The mutant that had just killed the man quickly noticed my vehicle and immediately charged over. I didn't hesitate. I slammed on the gas, sent it flying, and continued speeding forward. On the road, crash cars were scattered everywhere. Many sections were severely congested. But with the mobile base's sturdy armor, any cars parked diagonally blocking the way were directly rammed through and pushed aside to clear a path. Many mutants were attracted by my vehicle and continuously lunged at it. But I used acceleration and sharp turns to shake them off. These monsters were indeed incredibly strong. Whether they were children, women, or the elderly when alive, after mutating, they became extremely ferocious. When there were too many of them, I could even clearly feel the vehicle shaking. My heart pounded in my chest. A few charged straight from the front and were run over by me. The vehicle jolted violently. I didn't look back. In this situation, crushing a few mutants was no longer a big deal. However, as an ordinary person, I still didn't want to witness that gory scene with my own eyes. Shinbei Highway. I recalled Li Yusen's words. I didn't know what the situation at the highway entrance was like, but I decided to go check it out. Of course, I had no intention of going to the Shanghai safe zone. What I needed was this highway to get to Jinling, where Jiang Zhuing was. The disaster had struck. By taking the highway, I could reach Jinling within a day. I knew Jiang Zhuing hadn't mutated, but just thinking about the pain the virus caused was enough to make my heart heavy. After witnessing the sheer horror of the mutants with my own eyes, my anxiety grew even stronger. Even though I had prepared thoroughly for her and knew my sister's cautious nature, I still couldn't stop worrying, because she was the only family I had left to rely on. The closer I got to the Shinbei Highway entrance, the more survivors there were. Some were also driving to escape, but everyone was trying to squeeze ahead, making the roads even more chaotic. I honked a few times, noticing someone constantly cutting in from behind, taking up all the space. Before long, my path was blocked. A car overtook me, rolling its window down just a crack. A highly agitated face leaned close to the gap, cursing right at me, You idiot. Driving this massive piece of junk and blocking the road. After cursing, he slammed on the gas and sped forward. Immediately after, the cars behind also honked incessantly. People stuck their heads out, hurling a barrage of insults. Is the guy in front crazy? Get out of the way. Yeah, what's the point of driving that thing now? If you want to die, die alone. These cars seemed to belong to the same group, as they all bore the same logo and the words XX Corporation on their bodies. I guessed it was a fleet from some conglomerate. Seeing them not only recklessly cutting in line, but also cursing more and more viciously, my anger flared up. Everyone is trying to survive. What gives you the right to trample over others just to run away first? My vehicle might be big, but I was lining up properly. I stepped on the gas. Just as that car was about to cut in front of me again, a dry crunch rang out. The entire car shook violently, then was shoved aside by my mobile base, while I continued moving forward without a moment's hesitation. The driver of that car was initially stunned, then furious, but very quickly became completely dumbfounded. He stared blankly as my minibus, like a burly strongman, bulldozed its way through without listening to reason. It just forced its way through the traffic, squeezing the smaller cars from earlier to the sides. Damn it. The driver cursed, feeling both scared and angry, thinking the guy driving that minibus was an absolute lunatic. His luck was too good, squeezing through such chaos and still managing to get ahead. His speed wasn't fast, and the vehicle was an old minibus, yet he didn't get stuck in the traffic. In this situation, once you got stuck, you only had two choices: abandon the car and run, or wait to die. No matter how furious they were, the other cars couldn't do anything about it. Their mouths didn't stop cursing, but ultimately, they had to obediently tail behind my minibus. Right at this moment, piercing screams suddenly erupted from behind. I immediately turned on the rearview camera. The screen next to the control panel displayed a scene that made my scalp tingle. Hundreds of mutants appeared all at once. They crawled between the cars, even climbing straight onto the roofs. These monsters charged out from the end of the street, emitting low growls from their mouths. Their limbs and bodies were covered in blood, the corners of their mouths stained crimson as they ran madly in this direction. Their speed was already incredibly fast, and when they encountered cars, they didn't dodge, but directly used all four limbs to scramble over them. Those near them were tackled to the ground the moment they turned their heads. Agonized screams echoed everywhere. Some people had only run a few steps before the mutants pounced on them from behind, pinning them hard against the pavement. I watched with my own eyes as two people were running for their lives. Hearing the roars behind them getting closer, one of them suddenly revealed a ruthless expression and shoved the other to the ground. The person who was pushed let out a tragic scream, but before he could even stand up, the mutants had completely swarmed him. My mind went numb. This was an absolute one-sided slaughter. These mutants, whether in speed, strength, or agility, far surpassed normal humans. Hurry up! Hurry up! The cars that had been cutting in line earlier were now honking frantically. Seeing the mutants rapidly closing in, the fear in their hearts exploded. My vehicle was still moving forward, but it was too crowded ahead. Even though the traffic hadn't come to a complete halt, it couldn't speed up either. In just a moment, screams and car horns blended into pure chaos. Behind us, the fleeing crowd grew increasingly frantic. Some even shoved those running in front of them just to secure a path to survival. Right at this moment, I caught a glimpse of the sedan that had tried to cut me off earlier. Two girls were running alongside the car, desperately pounding on the back door. Please, open the door and let us in. Save us. Please. These two girls were terrified to the extreme. They had probably begged many other cars for help, but not a single one stopped. The mutants behind them were rapidly closing the distance. With the stamina of two ordinary girls, there was absolutely no way they could outrun them. If they couldn't get into a car, they would be torn to pieces in just 2 or 3 minutes. I looked at the distance between the mutants and the car. If he just slowed down a bit and opened the door for them, it wouldn't be a problem at all. But the car in front not only didn't stop, it actually sped up. The two girls could only run after it with all their might, screaming as they ran. Driver, please open the door. You don't even have to slow down. But the car doors were locked tight. They couldn't open them. The driver turned his head, his face twisted in anger, and roared, "Damn it. Let go right now. One of the girls suddenly sprinted, reaching his window, pounding on it while begging, "Please, open the door. Get lost. If you don't get lost, I'll run you over right now," he bellowed, then violently yanked the steering wheel. The girl was thrown to the ground, letting out a piercing scream. The other girl stumbled and almost fell with her. "Are you okay?" She quickly ran over to help her friend up. The two of them watched the car driving away, their faces pale white. Only despair remained in their eyes. I sat in the minibus, my brows furrowed tightly. Right at that moment, I suddenly froze, blurting out, "Huh?" The girl who just fell? She looked very familiar. Hesitating for only a split second, I abruptly spun the steering wheel, turning the vehicle around. Damn it! The cars behind were all desperately charging forward. Let alone turning around, no one even dared to stop. The cars that had stopped were already swarmed by mutants, their vision completely blocked, ultimately leaving them no choice but to slam the gas and crash into utility poles or fences. Before long, they would be dragged out of the shattered windows and eaten alive in a state of semi-consciousness. In this situation, everyone was fleeing madly. Yet there was a vehicle turning around. It was pure suicide. No one had the mind to play the hero anymore. I understood that very well. In the apocalypse, one's own life was always the top priority. Saving others should only be done when your own safety is guaranteed. But right now, with a bulletproof mobile base, saving those two girls wasn't a difficult task at all. As long as I stayed inside the vehicle, even being surrounded by a horde of mutants wasn't something to worry about. Not to mention, that girl was someone I knew, even if we weren't very close. Under the continuous reminders and adjustments from the starseed, I nimbly maneuvered the vehicle, weaving through the hundreds of meters of traffic. Amidst the jammed cars, my minibus was the only one driving against the flow. The two girls had practically accepted their fate by now. The mutants were less than 100 meters away from them. Even if they kept running, it would be useless. Holding hands tightly, tears streaming down their faces, they waited in despair for death. Right at that moment, they saw a minibus rushing straight toward them. Amidst the sea of rear bumpers, this vehicle driving against traffic was blindingly conspicuous. Being run over? The thought crossed their minds, and the two girls actually felt that being crushed to death might be better than being eaten alive. They slowly closed their eyes. A screeching friction and a strong gust of wind hit them, making the two girls jolt and open their eyes wide. As the minibus barreled toward them, it suddenly swerved and stopped right in front of them. The door was already open. From the driver's seat, I waved at them, my voice full of urgency. "Hurry, get in now." Grr. Over a dozen zombies had noticed them and were lunging forward madly. The girl who had fallen snapped out of her nightmare and immediately pulled her friend. "Hurry, get in." The moment they stepped inside, the horde of zombies lunged at their backs, slamming heavily against the door. The two girls collapsed onto the steps. Turning their heads, they saw ferocious faces pressed against the glass, fangs bared, growling. Bloody hands clawed and pounded violently on the door. The girls hadn't even caught their breath, their hearts pounding so hard they felt like they would leap out of their chests. "We're saved." The two girls felt like they had just woken up from a nightmare, as if they had just crossed the boundary between life and death. Who could have expected that, right at the moment they thought they were dead for sure, a vehicle would suddenly drive against the tide to save them? The girl who had fallen panted heavily, gripping the handrail with one hand. Gasping for air, she said, "Thank you. Really, thank you so much." "Don't mention it," I replied briefly. "If it weren't for you, we'd definitely be dead," the girl said. Her breathing finally began to steady, and she turned to look at me closely. They had boarded in such a rush earlier that she hadn't gotten a good look at the driver's face. But now, as her eyes met mine, she froze. "We meet again. What a coincidence," I smiled and said softly. That girl was the one who had attended to me at the car rental company before. Her name was Wen Xiaotian. "Xiaotian, did you forget him?" The other girl was immediately surprised. When Xiaotian looked at me, a memory flashing in her mind, and then she suddenly remembered. "You're the customer who rented the minibus, Mr. Jiang." At the time, I had left quite a deep impression on her. I had clearly come to rent a car, yet I didn't have a driver's license. I even said I was renting it just to park it there. Coupled with my rather casual way of speaking, she recognized me now. It was just that she completely didn't expect me to not only remember her name, but also risked turning the car around in the middle of the apocalypse to save her and her friend. You still remember me? I have a pretty good memory, I said honestly. As long as I've exchanged a few words or taken a glance, I usually remember the person when we meet again. Thank you. When Xiaotian was truly moved. Even if the reason I remembered her was simply because of a good memory, the fact that I turned back to save them was enough for her to be grateful for a lifetime. But I thought you didn't know how to drive? When Xiaotian said as she held onto the handrail and stood up, pulling her friend up with her. When her eyes clearly took in the space inside the vehicle, her whole body instantly froze. The other girl couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God! Which brand's luxury motorhome is this?" The interior before their eyes was so exquisite it looked exactly like a five-star hotel. "It's not from any brand," I replied bluntly without turning my head. "This is the minibus you rented to me, Miss Wen." The other girl immediately turned to look at Wen Xiaotian, but Wen Xiaotian was even more surprised. "My company doesn't have this kind of vehicle." "No way." The other girl was stunned. "How could such a small car rental company have a luxury vehicle like this?" "We really don't," Wen Xiaotian muttered. "Mr. Jiang rented it from us, but it was clearly just a normal minibus." Speaking up to here, she suddenly fell silent, her mouth slightly open, her eyes filled with disbelief. She recalled the moment the vehicle rushed over to save her. It really was the minibus. The exterior matched perfectly. But aside from the shell, this vehicle in front of her and that old minibus had absolutely nothing else in common. Just as when Xiaotian was still bewildered, a heavy thud rang out, and the entire vehicle jolted violently. The two girls hurriedly turned their heads to look outside, instantly chilled to the bone by the sight. Outside the door was a densely packed horde of zombies, and in the distance, even more were swarming over. Even without looking closely, one could imagine the level of despair outside. Zombies had completely covered the door, their bloody hands and vicious faces pressed against the glass. Under the constant pushing and smashing, the door rattled and creaked, emitting hair-raising sounds. They're about to break in." The other girl stammered, her lips trembling. When Xiaotian's face was also pale, she quickly ran closer to the driver's seat. "Mr. Jiang, drive, hurry." When she saw the dashboard full of modern buttons and levers, she was startled once again. But now was absolutely not the time to worry about that. She quickly realized I was stepping on the gas continuously, but the vehicle was moving very slowly. The front was completely blocked by zombies. In just a few seconds, the turned-around vehicle had been completely surrounded. "There are too many zombies," I said. When Xiaotian's heart sank, her voice full of guilt. "Mr. Jiang, if it weren't for saving us." "All right, you two find something to hold on to." Quickly, I interrupted. From the moment I decided to turn the car around, I had anticipated this situation. When Xiaotian nodded, knowing she couldn't help any further, and immediately followed my instructions. "Xiao Lily, hold on to the handrail, hurry." She quickly pulled her friend over. "This glass, it won't hold for long." Xiao Lily was almost in despair, but when Xiaotian still managed to place her hand on the handrail next to them. The smashing sounds grew increasingly fierce. Not just the door, but the entire body of the vehicle echoed with heavy thuds from all sides, accompanied by the hoarse growls of the zombies, making it feel like the car could be torn apart at any moment. Meanwhile, I was rapidly analyzing escape plans based on the Starseed's calculations. The base vehicle didn't just have defensive capabilities, it possessed other features as well. It was exactly because I knew this clearly that I dared to turn back and save them. "All right, let's try this function." I made my decision. "Hold on tight," I said, without turning my head. "We're charging out." When Xiaotian and Xiao Lily didn't dare say another word. Watching the zombies swarm over like a horde of black ants, slamming into the windows, their hearts were filled with nothing but despair. The entire vehicle was covered. If one looked from the outside, they'd probably only see the faint outline of a car amidst the sea of corpses. Moreover, they weren't just numerous, they were incredibly strong. The vehicle felt like it was being crushed between three living walls. In a situation like this, could we really charge out? When Xiaotian felt her entire body turn freezing cold, she and Xiao Lily gripped the handrail tightly. Time seemed to slow down. The vicious faces pressed against the glass appeared terrifyingly clear. Are we going to die here? Is he going to die because he saved us? A wave of guilt surged in her heart. As for me, sitting in the driver's seat, my focus was absolute, my mind sharp. In my ears, only the voice of the starseed echoed. Accumulating energy. Reached 30%. Activating the second form of the tires. Increasing friction. Accumulating energy. Reached 50%. Gear shift complete. Accumulating energy. Reached 70%. Sufficient fuel supplied. The primary form modified by the starseed allowed the base vehicle to reach a maximum output of 1,500 horsepower when accelerating, with a peak torque of up to 4,500, while utilizing a full-time four-wheel drive system. Of course, this state couldn't be maintained for long, otherwise it would consume a terrifying amount of fuel. For a normal truck, exceeding 500 horsepower was already top tier, and 700 horsepower was considered a monster. With this kind of power, plowing through a horde of zombies was no different from a normal car smashing through a pile of traffic cones. While my base vehicle was accumulating energy, up ahead, the driver I had rammed away was also witnessing the minibus being completely surrounded by zombies, unable to budge. He immediately broke into a gloating smile. Damn it, serves you right. As he cursed, he felt lucky that he wasn't as stupid as that kid. Furthermore, he was still bitter about his car being hit by me. So right now, seeing me about to be swallowed by the zombies, a flash of malicious delight even crossed his mind. Under the pressure of this massive catastrophe and prolonged fear, his psyche had become completely twisted. Now, he only wanted to rush to the highway entrance and slip into the military-protected zone. Everything was right in front of him, and in his mind, anyone who got in his way deserved to die. But right at that moment, a massive explosion suddenly rang out, making him jump out of his skin. At the same time, the roar of an engine and the screech of tires spinning wildly pierced the air, so deafening it made his scalp tingle. The driver turned his head in terror, then instantly froze. He stared wide-eyed at the minibus that had been surrounded by dozens of zombies, almost submerged in the rotting horde, suddenly shooting out like a frenzied prehistoric monster. The terrifying power sent chunks of zombies flying. The vehicle roared like a wild beast, crushing the fallen bodies under a spray of blood, and charged straight ahead. In just a few short seconds, the minibus had accelerated to a horrifying speed, barreling directly toward his small car. The driver was scared out of his wits. He screamed in panic and frantically yanked the steering wheel, swerving to the side of the road. If he had been even a second slower, his car would have definitely been crushed. Even so, the terrifying impact of the minibus still scraped the side of his car, creating a gruesome screech as metal and tires ground violently against the road. The small car was sent flying, spinning nearly 180 degrees before slamming into the guardrail. The driver suffered a massive concussion, his head spinning. The airbag deployed, smacking him right in the face. That insane acceleration and violent collision also transferred directly into the cabin of my minibus. Even though the two girls tried to hold onto the handrail tightly, they were still thrown off by the shockwave. They screamed and fell hard onto the floor. Fortunately, the inside of the vehicle was lined with thick, soft carpet, so they weren't injured. The minibus bucked like a crazed bull being ridden by a cowboy, bouncing violently, sending Wen Xiaodian and Xiao Lily rolling across the carpet, completely unable to stand. In their chaotic field of vision, they only had time to see the zombies clinging to the doors being thrown off and run over. Blood splattered everywhere, dyeing the windows red, a sight so horrifying it took their breath away. The vehicle just madly tore out of the zombie horde like a giant steel beast, ripping through the encirclement and carving out a bloody path. Speeding through a rain of blood, the zombies that were knocked down were continuously crushed under the wheels, leaving behind puddles of blood and mangled flesh on the road. The zombies in front were just like bugs getting splattered on a highway, smashing right into the windshield. But the sound this time was infinitely louder and more spine-chilling. It wasn't just one or two, but a whole barrage, up to dozens of zombies in a row. Lying on the carpet, Wen Xiaodian and Xiao Lily hadn't even recovered from the sight outside the doors before they heard those horrifying impacts. The two girls turned their heads toward the front of the vehicle, their hearts pounding relentlessly. A barrage of zombies slammed heavily into the windshield, almost completely blocking the view ahead. That fragile piece of glass looked like it could shatter at any moment. Just a single rock was enough to crack a windshield, let alone so many bodies crashing into it all at once. I ignored their panicked gazes. All my focus was concentrated straight ahead. In my mind, the data projected by the starseed was constantly updating. Impact on the left side of the base vehicle. No damage sustained. Impact on the right side of the base vehicle. No damage sustained. Windshield impacted. Energy consumption level. Remaining fuel. The collisions looked terrifying, but in reality, aside from creating an extremely gruesome scene, they caused absolutely no actual damage to the base vehicle. And the windshield remained perfectly intact. When the minibus finally broke free from the zombie horde and began running smoothly again, both girls were pale-faced. After all, they were just ordinary girls. It took a few seconds before they gradually snapped out of their blank state. It didn't break. The windshield is still intact. The doors are still sealed tight. The whole process might have only lasted a few seconds, but to them, it felt as long as an entire day. Now, realizing they were safe, everything they had just experienced felt exactly like a nightmare. When Xiaodian carefully stood up, trying to suppress her nausea, and approached the door. Looking out through the blood-soaked glass, she saw some zombies still chasing them on the road behind, but the distance had widened to over 10 meters. Many others lay sprawled on the ground, tearing into each other, probably fighting over the zombies my car had knocked down and crushed. These zombies were originally living people who had mutated, unlike in the movies where they died before turning into monsters. So even though they were eating each other, the sight was equally horrifying. When Xiaodian only took one glance before immediately looking away. She just needed to be sure that we had truly escaped the encirclement. No one expected this vehicle to have such terrifying power and ramming capability. Even the windshield was unbelievably durable. We escaped. We survived. The two girls breathed a sigh of relief, their hearts filled with gratitude. A moment later, when Xiaodian looked at the blood-splattered windshield and asked curiously, "Mr. Jiang, how is this car's glass so sturdy?" I paused slightly. Honestly, I didn't want to explain too much, but since she asked, I had to give a simple excuse to brush it off. It's nothing. I just replaced it with bulletproof glass. Of course, bulletproof glass alone wasn't enough to break out of the encirclement. Just now, I had activated the ramming and acceleration functions. If that still hadn't worked, I was even planning to use weapons, but in the end, it wasn't necessary. Bulletproof? Xiao Lily's eyes widened as she looked at the car door in front of her, feeling like she was watching a scene from a movie. Bulletproof cars weren't exactly common in everyday life. She had some knowledge about cars and knew that certain luxury brands offered custom bulletproof vehicles, with prices so exorbitant they were nearly 10 times that of a standard luxury car. Not to mention, if the bulletproof glass had been upgraded. Why install it on such an old minibus? Xiao Lily turned to Wen Xiaodian with a questioning look, completely baffled. Wen Xiaodian just shook her head, signaling that she and I didn't really know each other, so even if she wanted to help explain, she didn't know anything more. We're probably safe for now. You two find a seat and buckle up, I spoke up. Yes, thank you. The two girls expressed their gratitude once again. Don't mention it, I replied casually. To me, this was still within my control, just a small matter. Xiao Lily didn't want to look at the zombies anymore, so she quietly ran into the living area and sat down on the sofa. The sofa was so soft that the moment she touched it, she could feel the premium fleece-like material. It clearly wasn't cheap. Opposite the sofa was a small screen for watching movies, and next to it was a cabinet bolted to the floor. On top of it sat an exquisite tray with clean mineral water, glass cups, and some snacks. The carpet beneath her feet was as soft as cotton, making one unconsciously relax their body. The windows all had their curtains drawn tight, blocking the view outside. Coupled with the bulletproof glass, it gave Xiao Lily an even greater sense of security. Having just narrowly escaped death, they were currently still on the run for their lives, with the outside world swarming with zombies and panicked people. Yet here she was, sitting in such a safe and comfortable space. In that moment, Xiao Lily even had the illusion that all the horrifying scenes from just now were merely a dream. She looked around, growing more amazed by the luxury inside the minibus with every glance. To transform an old vehicle into this, who knows how much money it must have cost. Her curiosity about my identity grew stronger. Xiao Lily picked up a bottle of mineral water, looked at it for a moment, and then put it back down. This wasn't her car. If I hadn't explicitly offered, it wouldn't be proper for her to just drink it. Like when Xiao Lily was also a college student and her best friend. When the disaster broke out, the two of them were together and fled together. Thinking of this, Xiao Lily couldn't help but feel secretly lucky. If they hadn't run into me, someone when Xiaotian knew, she really didn't dare imagine what would have happened to her by now. After a moment of hesitation, when Xiaotian stepped into the driver's cabin and sat down in the passenger seat on the right. The moment she sat down, she felt as if her entire body was sinking into a soft cloud. From the seating posture to the backrest, it was incredibly comfortable. This surprised her yet again. But the scene ahead was anything but pleasant. Earlier, while hundreds of zombies had surrounded the minibus, a portion of them had bypassed us to charge forward. From inside the moving vehicle, we could see a small car that had been completely swarmed by zombies, forced to a halt. The unlucky driver was dragged out of the window by several zombies, his limbs flailing wildly. His agonizing screams tore through the air, only to be quickly drowned out by the zombie horde. When Xiaoyan's face instantly turned pale. I didn't stop the car at all, just quietly drove straight past. A few zombies raised their blood-covered faces to watch my car, growling and chasing after it in vain, but they were quickly left behind. Right at this moment, the highway entrance appeared before our eyes. The original toll booth had completely changed its appearance. Military trucks blocked the front, leaving only 3 passages open. On the truck beds, machine guns were lined up closely, their pitch-black barrels aimed straight at the hundreds of approaching vehicles. Fully armed soldiers stood strict guard at the entrance. Both sides of the road and the trucks parked along it were bristling with gun barrels pointing outward. Once a vehicle made it here, it was temporarily considered safe. Any stray zombies that appeared were immediately gunned down. The long line of cars behind was filled with anxiety and suspense. With my high vantage point, I could clearly observe the situation at the highway entrance. Every time a car approached, the guards would immediately inspect it before letting it pass. Each car took about 10 seconds, meaning 3 cars were cleared every 10 seconds. I quickly counted the remaining vehicles in front of me and estimated the wait time. There probably wouldn't be any major issues. My expression gradually relaxed. Having entered the military's protected zone, the tension I had been holding on to all this time finally began to ease. Seeing the military vehicles, the firearms, and the highway entrance right in front of her, when Xiaotian couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Vehicle speed, 20 kilometers per hour. Vehicle inspection, no damage. The starseed in my mind reported the base vehicle status as I slowly eased off the pedal, reducing speed. Occasionally, the bang-bang of gunfire rang out incessantly. The line of cars continued to inch forward. There were only a few cars left in front of me before it was my turn. But right at this moment, the zombie horde behind us was growing larger, and the gunfire became noticeably denser. Hearing the commotion, Xiao Lily also stepped out of the living area, standing next to Wen Xiaotian and looking back. The military's firepower was incredibly strong. Even though the zombies continuously surged forward, almost completely covering the street, they couldn't advance a single step. That made the 2 girls feel much more at ease. The closer they got to the highway entrance, the clearer the scene became. Dozens of military trucks were parked closely together, gun barrels stacked upon each other. Normally, this sight might make people tremble in fear, but right now, it brought an unprecedented sense of security. I waited calmly, when suddenly, from another lane, gunshots rang out at very close range, startling everyone. I immediately looked over and saw agonizing cries coming from a small car being inspected. 2 soldiers dragged out a male corpse that had just been shot dead. The corpse's arm had a bloody, mangled wound, and the sobbing woman was likely his wife or girlfriend. I'll say it one more time. An officer holding a megaphone said with a cold face, "Any vehicle carrying a bitten passenger, it's best you get out and leave on your own or turn back. If discovered, you will be shot on the spot. This virus is extremely contagious. Anyone bitten will turn into a monster and endanger others." Witnessing that scene, although most people were terrified, they didn't have much sympathy left for the couple. Compared to watching family or friends turn into zombies with their own eyes, then being torn apart and eaten right in front of them. Having a loved one shot dead in front of them no longer seemed like the biggest shock. The incident didn't interrupt the flow of vehicles entering, but right then, a rapid burst of gunfire erupted from behind. The soldiers conducting inspections up ahead also turned their heads, worry clearly showing on their faces. I glanced at the rearview monitor, just in time to see a soldier, after firing 2 shots, being dragged, gun and all, off the truck bed. 2 trucks were quickly swarmed by the seemingly endless horde of zombies. Blood-curdling screams also echoed from the high-rise buildings on both sides of the road. Further away, thousands, perhaps even more zombies were pouring in from all over the city, forming a surging sea of corpses on the streets. Hiss. Grr. The zombie horde, their crazed, bloodthirsty eyes glued to the highway entrance, let out low, deathly growls. Hurry up. The soldier pulled his gaze back, urging them with intense impatience. Clearly, the firing positions on both sides of the road couldn't hold out much longer. The zombies would overrun them sooner or later, and by then, there would be no time for these cars to pass. The survivors in the cars all understood this clearly. Everyone's face showed obvious tension, feeling like every passing minute dragged on for half an hour. Finally, it was my minibus's turn. The soldier stepped up and took a look around, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. Then he gave me a weird look. Running for your life, and you drive a car this big? The interior was luxurious, and there were 2 young girls sitting inside. Clearly, in his eyes, I was just some playboy rich kid who didn't know the meaning of death. Keep moving. His tone revealed obvious impatience. I reached up and touched my nose lightly, saying nothing. I just found it quite novel. Since I was a kid, this was the first time I had been treated like a spoiled rich kid. As the car passed through the toll booth, I saw that the booth's glass was shattered, smeared with blood and torn scraps of clothing, but the bodies were nowhere to be seen. Along the journey so far, I had witnessed far too many similar tragic scenes. The virus had erupted violently across the globe, turning a normal world into a living hell in the blink of an eye. Getting onto the highway, armed soldiers stood guard everywhere. Gunfire rang out occasionally, followed immediately by zombies being gunned down in the roadside grass. I drove calmly, quickly merging into the line of cars ahead. But before we had gone far, the line suddenly came to a halt. What's going on? Xiao Lily asked anxiously. Even though we had entered the military's protected zone, the slightest disturbance was enough to put people on edge. I saw a few people getting out of their cars. Some soldiers were shouting loudly, ordering them to move. Then they quickly ran along the line of cars, shouting and forcing many people to abandon their vehicles. The moment they got out, 2 bulldozers moved in, pushing the small cars to the side of the road and shoving them right off the highway. This sight made a bad feeling rise in my chest. Very quickly, a soldier approached the front of my car and shouted, "There's an overturned bus on the highway ahead. A lot of zombies are gathering. Our men are clearing the road ahead, but the zombies behind us are about to catch up. If there are too many cars at once, the highway will get jammed. We won't be able to protect you. Therefore, everyone must abandon their vehicles and proceed on foot. Women, children, and the elderly walk to the front to board the military trucks. Young and healthy men walk. No one is allowed to complain. We're walking just like you. From here to the Shanghai safe zone, we will escort you. Once there will be a safe place to rest, water to drink, and food to eat. Everyone, get out of your cars immediately." Hearing those shouts, the people in the surrounding cars hurriedly opened their doors and stepped out. Most of the fleeing survivors only had a car, or at most 1 or 2 family members, and not much luggage. The moment they heard about the Shanghai safe zone, everyone scrambled out of their cars, terrified of being left behind. Before long, the surrounding cars were all empty, leaving only my minibus. "Let's get out too," Xiao Lily said. When Xiao Tian hesitated for a moment, looking at me still sitting quietly in the driver's seat. "Mr. Jiang, hurry up." I shook my head. "You 2 go ahead and get out." "I'm not going." When Xiao Tian was stunned. "Not going." Xiao Lily didn't understand either. Was I not planning to follow the military? "That's right," I said slowly. "The military will take you to the Shanghai safe zone, but I need to go to Jinling City. Besides, I can't abandon this vehicle." To me, the base vehicle was my guarantee of survival. No matter what, I wouldn't give it up. My original plan was to drop the 2 of them off with the military and then continue heading toward Jinling. But now the highway ahead was blocked. To reach the section that connected to Jinling, I had to pass through that area. In this situation, my only option was to leave the highway. To Jinling? But the highway is impassable. Xiao Lily still couldn't believe it. The military was right in front of them. All they had to do was follow them to reach safety. Yet I was choosing Jinling. Don't do this. It'll be too dangerous on your own. It's better to follow the military to the safe zone. I can drive alongside the highway or find another route. There's always a way, I replied. But it's fine, I shook my head. You two just follow the military. You're girls, so there will be vehicles for you to sit in up ahead. It won't be too hard on you. Take good care of yourselves from now on. Seeing my determination, Xiao Lily didn't know what else to say. The soldier had already approached the car, continuing to knock on the door and urge them. Xiao Lily looked at me with apologetic eyes. Then I'll get out. Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Jiang. Be careful on the road. I hope we can meet again. Yeah, I hope so, I replied. Let's go, Xiao Lily said softly. But what surprised her was that when Xiao, who had been silent this whole time, raised her head, her expression showing that she had made a huge decision. I'm not going either, Xiao Lily was startled. When Xiao looked at her friend. Lily, my home is on the way to Jinling. If there was no other choice, I would have gone to the safe zone too. But since Mr. Jiang is heading to Jinling, I want to go back and check on my home. At this point, her eyes grew red. Whether my family is dead or alive, I have to see it with my own eyes at least once. She turned to look at me, her voice full of pleading. Mr. Jiang, I wonder if you could let me tag along? Even though I can't help much, I can provide some information about the routes. My dad used to drive this route to deliver goods. I've ridden with him many times since I was little. I know a few of the routes. Mr. Jiang. Faced with her plea, I thought for a moment and then nodded. I wasn't familiar with the roads anyway, so having someone to help with that would be good. Thank you, Mr. Jiang. When Xiao showed obvious relief, then turned to Xiao Lily. Lily, you'll have to go on your own. Remember to take good care of yourself. Hearing that, Xiao Lily's tears also fell. She didn't know if her parents were dead or alive either, but her hometown was too far away. There was absolutely no chance of going back. Now, even the best friend she had fled with was about to part ways. Get out of the car now? Right at that moment, the soldier was standing at the door, knocking hard and shouting to hurry them up. Xiao Lily stepped out of the car with regret. The soldier, seeing that when Xiao and I were still sitting inside, especially me, sitting calmly in the driver's seat, instantly flew into a rage and yelled, "What are you still sitting in the car for? This vehicle definitely can't be parked in the middle of the road. You're blocking the whole path." I spoke up to apologize. Sorry, I'll drive it away right now. Seeing that my attitude was quite polite, the soldier's expression softened a bit, but he still pointed and continued, drive it to the side of the road, so the bulldozer can easily push it away, he said as he stepped aside, muttering while watching the vehicle. A car this big, who knows if it can even be pushed, might even have to dismantle the guardrail. The armored vehicles, trucks, and the many soldiers guarding the highway entrance would have to retreat when they could no longer hold the line, so the road had to be cleared. The military's only mission was to escort the survivors away, not to stay and fight to the death against endless monsters. Right at that moment, an ear-piercing air raid siren suddenly blared from the direction of the highway entrance. The soldier immediately turned his head to look. The people who had gotten out of their cars and were walking ahead also turned around in unison. Some immediately broke into a run, while others stood frozen with worried expressions. The crowd began to show signs of chaos. Don't panic, a soldier shouted loudly. This is the final siren, reminding the survivors in the city to get here quickly. Bang, bang, bang. The gunfire grew dense and was already very close. Looking from afar, one could faintly see a chaotic mass of figures. They were all zombies. In this situation, even if there were survivors who heard the siren, there was no way they could push through the sea of zombies to reach the highway. The people present here were the extremely lucky few who had survived. The soldier turned back to look at my car, his voice more urgent. The siren has sounded. There's not much time left. Hurry up, Virum. He suddenly heard the engine roar like thunder. Right after, my minibus shot forward like a race car, then abruptly swerved, carving a massive arc straight toward the edge of the highway. This sight instantly drew the attention of many survivors. Initially, They had been looking toward the highway entrance, but now all their eyes were pulled back by the roar of the engine and that minibus. Seeing the vehicle speed off like a race car, both the soldier and the people around were stunned. "Pretty good driving skills," the soldier blurted out a compliment, only to immediately scream, "Holy shit." The minibus was barreling straight toward the edge of the road without any sign of slowing down. Right in front of it was the guardrail. Crash. Under everyone's astonished gazes, the minibus smashed right through the guardrail and flew off the highway. The vehicle slid down the 2 to 3 meter high embankment and came to a stop on the grass below. "What the hell?" The soldier hurriedly ran over to check the situation. Many other survivors also craned their necks to look. In their minds, their first reaction was that this guy's driving skills were terrible, driving straight off the highway. Who knows if he's injured? But regardless, it solved the problem. As long as they were okay, they could get back on the road, and there was no need to push this bulky vehicle anymore. However, right at that moment, the minibus suddenly shook violently, looking like a drunkard stumbling along. Many thought the car was broken, but just a second later, it started moving again. The engine revved as it rolled off the grass, smashed through the green roadside fence, and barreled straight onto the narrow dirt road next to it. What's going on? What is this guy trying to do? Under the bewildered gazes of the crowd on the highway, the minibus slowly drove away from the highway, following the dirt road. The soldier stared wide-eyed, unable to believe that this vehicle had actually just left. Not far away, Xiao Lily was waving frantically at my car. She also hadn't expected me to use such a brutal method to leave the highway. When the car plunged down, she was so terrified her heart clenched. But fortunately, the vehicle seemed completely unharmed, and the people inside were definitely still safe. "Xiaodian, Mr. Jiang, take care." Xiao Lily waved hard, feeling her eyes blur, no longer able to clearly see the silhouette of the minibus fading into the distance. Collision caused no damage to the base vehicle. Current status of the base vehicle is completely normal. I listened to the Starseed's report while glancing back at the highway behind me. This dirt road ran parallel to the highway. As I drove along it, I could still see the small cars pushed to the shoulder and the crowd of people trudging forward. Safe for now. But as the tension gradually subsided, the survivors finally began to clearly process what had just happened in that short span of time. Some burst into tears. Even those who didn't cry wore heavy, gloomy expressions. Those who had lost loved ones, those whose futures were bleak, everyone was drowning in their own chaotic emotions. I looked at them. When Xiaodian also stared silently out the window, her eyes carrying a hint of sorrow. On the highway, both the survivors and the soldiers turned their heads to look at this bizarre minibus, so stunned they temporarily forgot what they were doing, just quietly watching it go. Before long, the dirt road reached a large curve, completely diverging from the highway. I still hadn't seen the military's vanguard, nor had I seen Li Yusin or any other acquaintances. I took one last glance at the fleeing crowd on the highway, then turned the steering wheel, driving around the bend. The minibus continued at a steady speed, quickly leaving the highway behind. That also meant we were getting further and further away from the Shunhai safe zone and the military's protection. "Miss Wen," I spoke up, when Xiaodian jolted and quickly turned her head. "What is it?" Then she added, "Don't call me Miss Wen anymore. Just call me Wen Xiaodian, or if you don't mind, call me Xiaodian. My friends all call me that." "All right," I nodded. "Then don't call me Mr. Jiang anymore either. My name is Jiang Lushi." "Mr. Jiang." When Xiaodian was still a bit shy, not daring to call me by my full name, so she stuck to the old address. "You said you knew a few other routes. Could you be more specific?" I asked. Even though I had downloaded maps, the GPS system couldn't be used, making it practically useless right now. Leaving the highway meant entering an unknown, dangerous area, something I always wanted to avoid. If when Xiaodian was truly familiar with the roads, maybe she could help find a safer route. "Okay," when Xiaodian nodded hurriedly. Her home was over 100 kilometers away from Jinling City, located in a little-known small county. Later, she got accepted into a university in Jiangbei. Her family was very ordinary. Her father was a long-haul truck driver, mainly running the route from that small county to Jiangbei. When she was little, during winter or summer breaks, when Xiaodian would often tag along with her dad on his long hauls, sometimes even getting the chance to visit Jiangbei. Back then, for some reason, I found the scenery along the way really interesting. It was a lot of fun when Xiaotian sighed softly, then quickly returned to the topic, saying somewhat shyly, "Sorry, I've said so much, but still haven't gotten to the point." "It's fine," I replied. For a young girl who had just narrowly escaped death and was still worrying about her family, being able to stay this calm was already very rare. When Xiaotian's eyes were still red, I happened to catch the moment she tried to look up, as if holding back tears. "Go on. We still have a long way to go anyway," I added. The dirt road ahead wound on for a long stretch, with no forks in sight for now. When Xiaotian couldn't help but let out a faint smile. "I'll tell you right now. I just seriously recalled the entire route. At first, I was worried that since these were memories from when I was little, I wouldn't remember them clearly. But thinking about it carefully just now, I realized I still remember it pretty well. There are two routes that pass through major cities, where the traffic is very heavy." I shook my head immediately. Any road with a lot of cars and people is a no-go. On the highway, we at least had the military clearing the way. If we get stuck in the middle of the road, we'll just be waiting to die. "Are there any other routes?" I didn't think those two routes were a good idea either, when Xiaotian nodded. "There's another route that detours through small towns, because there are many industrial zones along the way for deliveries. But this route is also very crowded. If it's crowded, there will definitely be no shortage of zombies." I immediately ruled out that option. "There's one more route," when Xiaotian continued. "It goes through mountain roads. The road conditions are quite complex. There's a very long stretch where there's almost nothing along the way." This route made me pause and think. Complex mountain roads weren't a big deal for me, because the starseed would constantly assist in adjusting the driving, greatly reducing the risks. The thing that made one hesitate was exactly what when Xiaotian pointed out, the phrase, "almost nothing." No food, no water, and no gas stations. Of course, she had no idea that the stockpile on this base vehicle was enough to open a small supermarket right away. As for drinking water, there was plenty to last a very long time. There was absolutely no need to ration it to the bare minimum for survival. But I had no intention of explaining these things. Not because I didn't trust her, but simply because I hated the hassle. However, the lack of gas stations was indeed something to consider. "Tell me more details about this route," I asked. "And do you know roughly how many kilometers it is?" When Xiaotian only gave an estimated number. I added about 50 kilometers as a buffer and let the starseed start calculating. Previously, when driving the minibus home from the rental company, I had the driver fill up the tank, and later I bought some more through a few other channels. When the vehicle was upgraded into the base vehicle, the fuel tank was also upgraded to a completely different standard, with a capacity much larger than a normal minibus. I hadn't anticipated this at first, but thinking back now, the amount of gas I bought back then was truly too little. Calculating based on current parameters, the base vehicle's fuel tank has a capacity of 1,000 liters. Remaining fuel is 210 liters. Estimated range is approximately 1,050 kilometers. A normal minibus's fuel tank is only about 50 liters. Aside from filling it up, I had bought an extra 180 liters of gas. At the time, I thought it was a lot. But compared to the base vehicle's 1,000-liter tank, that amount was nothing. The fuel tank was located at the back of the vehicle, right under the bed, with a volume of about 1.25 cubic meters. 1,000 kilometers is enough for me to drive to Jinling and find Zhangzhuiying, I calculated silently. However, this number was based on the base vehicle's normal fuel consumption, meaning 20 liters per 100 kilometers, under the condition of no heavy acceleration or ramming obstacles. Every special feature of the base vehicle consumed gas, which was why the fuel tank was designed to be so large. "Mr. Jiang, have you decided?" Seeing me stay silent for quite a while, when Xiaotian asked with a bit of worry. She was afraid that the routes she suggested were all unsuitable, which would mean she couldn't help me at all. In her mind, helping each other had to be a two-way street. I had helped her so much, and this was the only little thing she could do in return. I spoke up. "We'll take the mountain road." After weighing everything, I realized this was the least troublesome option. Even though 1,000 kilometers couldn't be considered the absolute maximum limit of the base vehicle, at the very least, getting the car to Wen Xiaotian's home county was entirely feasible. If there are gas stations along the way, we'll scavenge for more. Wen Xiaotian was a bit surprised by this decision. She had thought I would choose to go through the industrial zones, even though the zombies might be very dense. But once I made my decision, she had no objections. As long as there was gas, even if there was no food, in her mind, it wasn't a big deal. Actually, I've read some popular science articles when Xiaotian added, as long as there's water, a person can sustain life. Some people don't eat for a whole month to lose weight, and they're still fine. Even without food or water, you can hold out for a few days. I glanced at her, not understanding why she was bringing this up. When Xiaotian smiled and added, I think, maybe I should lose some weight too. I really didn't know how to respond to that. Did she actually think we were going to have to starve for the rest of the trip? The base vehicle glided smoothly along the dirt road. Occasionally, I could see a few zombies standing blankly in the middle of the fields or by the side of the road. Whenever they spotted the vehicle, they instantly went crazy like wild beasts, shrieking and lunging forward. But usually, before they could even get close, they were left in the dust, only able to watch helplessly as the car zoomed past them. Ark. The zombies flailed their arms in despair, their bloodshot eyes devoid of any sanity, leaving only madness and brutality. At first, when Xiaotian stared intently out the window, but gradually, as a sense of security crept in, she relaxed and drifted into a fitful sleep. Adjusting direction to the left, continuing straight, I drove while glancing over. In her sleep, she would occasionally jolt, looking very restless. After that period of running for her life, her nerves constantly taut as a bowstring. Both her physical and mental strength had surely reached their limits. Seeing her like this, I thought of Jiang Zhuiying again. I wonder if she's scared right now, hiding at home. When Xiaotian woke up, she realized the minibus had stopped. Outside, it was dusk. On one side was a cliff, and on the other was a mountain forest obscured in the darkness. Mr. Jiang? Not seeing me in the driver's seat, she immediately sat bolt upright. She wasn't sure how long she had slept, but based on the fact that the car had gone deep into the mountain roads, it had probably been 2 or 3 hours. In the quiet space of the mountain forest, the vehicle stood alone. Waking up to find herself all alone, a sense of panic instantly welled up. She hurriedly walked into the cabin. Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang. Although the space inside was fully equipped, it was quite cramped. A single glance was enough to see every corner, yet I was nowhere to be found. Just as she was growing more and more panicked, the sound of trickling water suddenly came from the small door nearby. The sound of water? Right after, a soft click rang out, and the door opened. I stepped out from inside, steam still rising from my body, my hair soaking wet. Towel drying my hair, I looked at her. You're awake? Yes. It seems I slept for a long time. Not that long. But it looked like you didn't sleep well. In this situation, the more you sleep, the more tired you get. Besides, being able to sleep at all right now is a blessing. My words made her a bit embarrassed, feeling like she was being too carefree in this situation. Actually, when Xiaotian's stamina wasn't great to begin with. Normally, studying and working part-time already left her sleep-deprived. Today, the virus broke out. She even fainted, suffered a massive psychological shock, and fled in panic. The moment she was temporarily safe, the pent-up exhaustion naturally crashed down on her. But what surprised her more than anything was me. Her sleeping was a natural reflex of the body, but as for me, do you want to take a shower? My question completely confirmed the speculation in her mind. I had just finished showering. Today she had been rolling around, running for her life everywhere, her body covered in dirt and grime. For a girl who liked to stay clean, that must have been very uncomfortable. But in this situation, she hadn't even thought about the possibility of taking a shower. Having water to drink was already incredibly lucky. Yet I didn't just take a shower, I took a hot shower. I found a stream on the way and brought some water back to filter. It's not drinkable, but it's very comfortable for a shower. If you want, there's body wash inside. The hair dryer is next to the mirror. When Xiaotian listened in a daze, unable to help but ask, if it's already filtered, why isn't it drinkable? She felt that using hot water like this just for a shower was truly too extravagant. There's no need. For drinking water, just turn on the tap in the kitchen. After your shower, if you're hungry, go to the kitchen and cook some noodles. There are noodles and some fresh vegetables in the cabinet. Actually, I even had frozen dumplings, but I figured eating dumplings now would be a bit of a waste. I had stocked up on flour and dry food, but the dried meat wasn't enough to make filling. The perishable foods were all kept in the kitchen. If they weren't eaten soon, they'd go to waste. I considered noodles just a simple meal, but I didn't expect it to stir up so many thoughts in Wen Xiaoyan's mind. She had prepared herself mentally to starve. Yet not only did she get to take a hot shower, she could also eat piping hot noodles, even with vegetables. If it weren't for the memories of those zombie faces still vivid in her mind, she would have suspected that everything she had experienced was just an illusion. This vehicle was exactly like a mobile hotel. The fact that I told her to cook made her feel even luckier. A hot shower, hot food, all of it was provided by me, while she couldn't help much at all. "I'll go take a shower," Wen Xiaoyan said. When she finished showering, she brought the noodles out and placed them on the small folding table. I sat opposite her, looking at the 2 bowls of noodles, momentarily speechless. Her bowl only had a few strands of noodles, while mine was filled to the brim, complete with an egg, greens, and sausage. It looked incredibly hearty. "I saw there wasn't much left in the cabinet, so we have to save it. Besides, I don't eat much anyway," she explained. In reality, eating like that was barely enough to line the stomach. Even a child would eat more than that, let alone considering she had expended quite a bit of energy today. I really wanted to tell her that the things in the cabinet were only a tiny fraction of my food reserves. Even without rationing, it was enough to eat all the way back to her home. But in the end, I only said one thing: eat up. It's been a while since I had noodles. The taste really isn't bad. But maybe it'd be better to cook white rice tomorrow. After finishing the noodles, I drove a bit further and then pulled over by the side of the road, deciding to rest there for the night. The next morning, when the sky was fully bright, I finally resumed the journey. Now, although there was almost no risk of colliding with other vehicles on the road, I was someone who hadn't even gotten a driver's license yet, with absolutely no experience driving on mountain roads. Even with the starseed assisting with adjustments, I still decided not to drive at night, and also avoided driving when mentally fatigued. If I didn't die from a zombie bite, but died in a car crash instead, that would truly be too unjust. When we started climbing this mountain road yesterday, it was already dusk. Come daytime, the scenery appeared exactly as Wen Xiaoyan had described. The surroundings were almost entirely desolate. Only occasionally could you see 1 or 2 rural houses sitting far off in the distance. By the road, there was a dilapidated car wash and repair shop. Next to it was a small diner with filthy glass doors, on which a few lines of tomato red text were pasted. Homestyle cooking. It carried a very distinct, worn-out vibe. This kind of diner specialized in serving long-haul drivers. In the empty dirt lot in front of the car wash, 2 large trucks were parked. Their windows were all smashed, and the ground was mottled with bloodstains, but the drivers were nowhere to be seen. I didn't know if they had been chased by zombies and forced to flee, or if they hadn't managed to run in time. I stopped the car in front of the tomato diner, looking toward the tightly shut, old door. There were still dried bloodstains stuck to the door, looking incredibly eerie. "Mr. Jiang, are you planning to?" Wen Xiaoyan asked hesitantly when she saw me stop the car. "It's nothing. I just want to find some food," I replied. In the early stages of the apocalypse, a lot of fresh food still hadn't spoiled. Gathering food right now was relatively easy. In a few days, when the fresh food started to rot, we would only be able to rely on non-perishable packaged goods. Even though I had prepared quite a bit of reserves, with 2 people eating, we couldn't pass up fresh ingredients when we came across them. Find food. Is the food in this diner still edible? Wen Xiaoyan worried. I chuckled softly, understanding that she was afraid the food had been contaminated by the virus. But I already knew from the starseed that before the virus broke out, the food and water sources all over the world had already been infected. Even humans all carried the virus in their bodies. Those who had survived the mutation phase like me would no longer be affected, so scavenging for food right now was absolutely not a problem. Of course, getting bitten by a zombie was still absolutely forbidden, because the virus on them had been enhanced. I couldn't explain these things to Wen Xiaoyan. It was too complicated, and I couldn't clearly explain how I knew. I just said simply, "Don't worry, the food is fine." "Then, do we have to get out of the car to get it?" she asked timidly. Getting out of the car right now was indeed very dangerous, but in the apocalypse, everything was dangerous, especially scavenging for food. Wen Xiaoyan's face paled. She was clearly scared, but if I needed her to, she was still willing to get out. "Sit tight," I said. Before she could even react, The engine roared. Virum. The base vehicle charged straight ahead like an enraged bull, smashing right into the diner's door. The wooden door and the surrounding walls collapsed with a crash. I had observed it carefully beforehand. This roadside diner was just a temporary structure, with a thin layer of metal on the outside. The inside was foam. The structure was extremely weak, completely unable to withstand a heavy impact. When the wall collapsed, the entire roof shook as well. Right then, the scene inside the diner appeared before my eyes. Four zombies were sprawled on the ground, frantically fighting over something. Blood and organs were splattered everywhere. On the floor were about 5 disemboweled corpses, their flesh and blood torn apart, almost completely eaten clean. I say about, because it was truly impossible to tell how many people that pile of mangled corpses actually was. When Xiaotian couldn't help but scream, then hurriedly covered her mouth. The sight before her was far too horrifying, but in the apocalypse, she had to learn to get used to it. The 4 zombies raised their heads in unison, their bloodshot eyes locking onto the base vehicle. The veins on their faces bulged, their mouths and faces covered in blood and flesh. They growled madly and lunged straight at us. I didn't say a word, just floored the gas pedal. Virum. The engine roared. The base vehicle sent all 4 zombies flying, smashing straight into the wall at the back of the diner. With a bang, the dirt wall collapsed. The body of the vehicle pushed the zombie corpses along with a large chunk of the wall, crashing heavily into the back. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere, a mix of red and white, covering the windshield. The 4 zombies were cleanly rammed to death. I breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the blurry layer of blood and flesh on the glass, I hesitated for a moment before turning on the wipers. The wipers swept across silently, dragging chunks of mangled flesh with them, turning the glass blood red. Windshield washer fluid sprayed out, diluting the bloodstains, wiping them clean bit by bit. It hadn't even been 24 hours since the apocalypse began, but I already felt myself gradually getting used to this gore and brutality. When Xiaotian stood behind me, biting her lip as she watched the blood flow down the glass, not saying a word. She understood. Only by staying calm like this could one survive. If she just panicked and cried, sooner or later she'd become zombie food. Let me go down and find the food. She suddenly gathered her wits and offered proactively. Getting out of the car was not only dangerous, but she also had to face the corpses directly, which was extremely disgusting. But she couldn't let me do everything. She didn't want to become a burden. I'm opening the door. Only after getting my approval did she carefully step out of the vehicle. In this situation, letting her go down was the most logical choice, because only I could control the star seat. If anything happened, I could still drive to support her immediately. The diner had been smashed to pieces. When Xiaotian struggled to push aside the pile of broken materials, finding her way to the chest freezer in the kitchen. The freezer was almost as tall as a person. Inside, it was packed with chicken, eggs, and vegetables, enough to feed over a dozen people for several days. She couldn't bring the whole freezer onto the car, so she found clean plastic bags and divided the food to carry it in batches. My car only had a small refrigerator, which couldn't fit all that stuff. And if it wasn't eaten soon, it would spoil anyway. Mr. Jiang, let me cook dinner for you tonight, she said with full confidence. She had known how to cook since she was little and had quite a knack for it. She even brought along oil, salt, soy sauce, a portable gas stove, and a pan. The kitchen on the car only had one small pot, which was very inconvenient. She decided to turn the living area into a kitchen. Even though the space was already cramped, thankfully she was petite, so she could still manage. She was truly hungry. Last night, she had only dared to eat a meager bowl of noodles. With so much fresh food, it would be a waste not to eat it. I replied. It was completely dark out, and I was planning to rest here anyway. Watching her busy washing vegetables and cooking, a bit of anticipation welled up in my heart. The only issue was that the space was too small. Kitchenware and pots were scattered everywhere. Even though the table, chairs, and bed could be folded away, and there was no shortage of storage compartments, the base vehicle's floor area was still limited. If it could be even bigger, holding more gas, more food, more amenities, then it would truly live up to the name Mobile Base. The sun had completely set. Dinner was almost ready, and the wafting aroma made me swallow my saliva. It had been a long time since I had a proper meal. But right at that moment, grr, a low, deep growl echoed from afar in the night. My heart suddenly clenched. That growl blended with the mountain wind, chilling me to the bone. In the context of the apocalypse, even with the base vehicle, I still didn't dare let my guard down. From the information provided by the starseed, I knew this apocalypse was absolutely not simple. If it were just ordinary zombies, the government could have completely controlled the situation, and this wouldn't have been called an apocalypse. That bizarre growl just now made my heart pound wildly. An intense feeling of unease surged in my chest. "Turn off the stove now," I said quickly, when Xiaotian froze. She had just put the food into the pan. The dish wasn't even done yet. If she turned off the stove now, it was very likely it wouldn't be edible anymore. But she also immediately realized that the growl was completely abnormal and quickly turned off the stove. At the same time, I also cut all power to the base vehicle. The lights went out, and the surroundings plunged into total darkness. On the desolate rural road, the air was strangely fresh. Without any artificial lights, through the car window, I could see the deep blue night sky, densely packed with stars. A crescent moon hung suspended over the mountain peak, radiating a cold, faint light. The sky was beautiful, but looking up at it right now, my scalp went numb. Under the crescent moon, I saw a massive black silhouette staring intently at the base vehicle. It looked like a monstrous beast, but I couldn't clearly make out what it was. I didn't dare turn on the lights. Trying to hold my breath, I crouched down low, simultaneously pulling when Xiaotian down with me. The base vehicle had excellent soundproofing. Even though we had just been cooking, the aroma couldn't escape outside. That thing probably wasn't attracted by the smell of food, but by the light. Now that I had turned off all the lights, I just hoped it would lose our scent and leave. The apocalypse had just begun. My base vehicle was still in its initial stage. If we encountered a terrifying monster right now, all it would take was for the car to be flipped over, and everything would be over. "Mr. Jiang," when Xiaotian whispered beside me, her voice trembling. In this gloomy apocalyptic setting, having to face a giant black silhouette in the night, a girl couldn't help but be terrified. "Hide by the sofa. Don't make a sound." I stayed crouched, slowly making my way toward the driver's seat. The thought of driving away and escaping had already popped into my head, because I realized that even though the lights were off, that black silhouette was still approaching. But I didn't dare make any sudden movements, afraid of provoking it. The distance grew shorter and shorter. Under the dim moonlight, I finally got a clear look at that thing. It was a giant wild boar. How could a wild boar be this huge? I was horrified. Even though it was still a distance away, compared to the surrounding houses, I could determine that this wild boar was at least as big as a small truck. Its height was almost equal to the base vehicle, only its body was slightly shorter. Its entire body was covered in black bristles as hard as steel, matted with scabs of blood, looking as if it had just crawled out of a thick pool of blood. Its two sharp tusks were like giant blades. On one of the tusks, a whole segment of intestines was still snagged, yet to fall off. This was truly a wild boar straight out of hell. It stared intently at my base vehicle. Its eyes, as large as headlights, emitted a glowing red light. It wasn't an illusion. Its eyes were actually glowing, like a wolf's eyes in the night. Only this light was terrifyingly red. "This is bad. Could this be?" I suddenly remembered a piece of information from the starseed. After the apocalypse began, aside from some humans and animals turning into zombies, there were also individuals that would undergo mutation. These mutants were vastly stronger than zombies of the same species. Previously, only reading the text descriptions, I didn't have a clear sense of it. But now, seeing a mutated wild boar with my own eyes, I finally understood true terror. A wild boar the size of a small truck might not sound that scary, but when it was standing right in front of you, slowly approaching, with its sharp tusks, steel-like bristles, and glowing red eyes, the pressure it brought was almost suffocating. At this moment, the only thing separating me and the wild boar was a layer of windshield glass, still mottled with streaks of undried blood. One layer of glass, one man, one beast, facing each other. Right at that moment, roar! The wild boar suddenly let out a ferocious bellow, gathered strength in its four legs, and charged straight at the base vehicle. As it began to run, every heavy footstep cracked the ground, sending dirt and rocks flying. A wild boar weighing at least 10 tons, yet its speed was almost as fast as a cheetah. I could even feel the ground trembling slightly. Damn it! I panicked. With that kind of weight, a head-on collision would generate a terrifying impact force. The base vehicle would definitely be flipped over instantly. The armor might be able to withstand the blow, but the vehicle's weight was fundamentally not much more than a bus. Once flipped, no matter how thick the armor was, it would be pried open bit by this monster. Fuck! I cursed, darting toward the driver's seat like an arrow. The wild boar was already too close. There was no time to turn the car around. If I swerved, it would ram straight into the side of the car, and the result would still be getting flipped. There was only one option left, and it was the only choice I could make in a split second. Risk it. I yanked the gear shift and floored the gas pedal. Vroom. The base vehicle roared like a wild beast, shooting forward in the blink of an eye. Thanks to the Starseed's modifications, the vehicle's acceleration capabilities far exceeded those of a normal car. Moreover, I hadn't pulled the handbrake, so the car launched immediately. Seatbelt! I shouted loudly. Instantly, the seatbelt on the driver's seat automatically deployed, strapping me in tight. In the back, in the small living area, when Xiaotian sat down on the sofa, frantically buckling her seatbelt. That shout just now was meant for her. In just a few short seconds, the base vehicle had accelerated to 100 kilometers per hour. I gritted my teeth, watching the wild boar charging straight at us. The transparent windshield made it feel like it was ramming right into my face, its sharp tusks aimed directly at my head. If the glass couldn't hold, I would be impaled right in the driver's seat. In this life or death moment, my mind went blank. All I knew was to grip the steering wheel tightly, channel all my strength into my leg, and floor the gas pedal. Let's go all out. The blood in my veins was boiling. The wild boar's head was right in front of my eyes. I could even see the reflection of myself and the base vehicle in its glowing red eyes. Impact. Crash. The entire vehicle shook violently. The terrifying impact force yanked my body forward. The seatbelt tightened so hard I felt like I was about to be sliced in half. The airbag deployed, smacking me right in the face, leaving my head spinning. At the same time, a series of loud crashes rang out from the back. Pots, pans, and bowls clattered onto the floor due to inertia. The sofa was bolted down so it didn't budge, but the impact was so massive that when Xiaotian, despite being strapped to the seat, still screamed in panic. She felt a sharp pain in her head, unsure of what she had hit. Her vision went dark, and she passed out. The airbag in front of me quickly deflated. This was a design of the base vehicle so as not to obstruct vision. Even though my head was still spinning and my stomach burned from the seatbelt, I tried to look ahead through the windshield. The glass was cracked into two large, plate-sized webs, its transparency significantly reduced. This type of bulletproof glass would turn milky white when subjected to a massive impact, but it still retained its protective capabilities. Not just the glass, the front of the car was also caved in by a large chunk. This collision was truly too terrifying. Warning: base vehicle damaged. Damage level, 3.5. Front bulletproof glass durability reduced by 60%. Engine system damaged. Acceleration and ramming functions temporarily disabled. Internal power supply cut off. The notifications rang out in my head. The base vehicle is heavily damaged? I was stunned. Before, facing a whole horde of zombies was no problem. Yet now? Just a single mutated wild boar had caused severe damage to the base vehicle. Among the series of notifications from the Starseed, the one that sent a chill down my spine the most was that the base vehicle's powertrain system had been damaged. This meant the vehicle could no longer accelerate rapidly, completely losing its active ramming capability. Facing the giant mutated wild boar in front of me, my base vehicle had practically turned into a sitting duck waiting to be attacked. That's right, the mutated wild boar. I stared intently at the monster in front of the car. The collision just now hadn't just damaged the vehicle. The beast itself was also heavily injured. The wild boar was sprawled on the ground, its head covered in blood. Blood flowed down, blurring its vision. One of its two giant tusks had snapped off, exposing the white marrow inside, looking incredibly gruesome. Roar! The mutated wild boar bellowed ferociously. This time, without the base vehicle's soundproofing to block it, the full force of the roar slammed right into me. That deep, muffled sound made my internal organs vibrate. My body went almost completely stiff, unable to move. I felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, making my chest tighten and choking me, making it incredibly difficult to breathe. This roar is truly terrifying. The mutated wild boar slowly stood up. Its skull was clearly cracked, but with its terrifying vitality, it could still stand firm and continue to exert its horrifying strength. Its headlight-like red eyes stared intently at me, separated only by a fragile, cracked windshield. Its remaining tusk was wedged tightly under the base vehicle's chassis. Then, it flexed its muscles, trying to flip the entire car over. My heart felt like it had plunged into an ice hole. Once the base vehicle was flipped, everything would be over. Can it still run? Can it still run? Anxious, I yanked the gear shift, trying to restart the car. The engine let out a heavy, deep rumble. The four wheels started moving. It can still run. Although the rapid acceleration and ramming functions were broken, the base vehicle could still move normally. The two front wheels were lifted off the ground, spinning in the air, while the rear wheels ground hard against the road, sending dirt and rocks flying. The pushing force wasn't too strong, but the wild boar was also injured, so it temporarily couldn't flip the car immediately. Even so, the front of the car was being lifted higher and higher. The base vehicle was right on the verge of tipping over. Damn it! I gripped the steering wheel tightly, flooring the gas pedal, cold sweat pouring down my forehead. Calm down. I have to stay calm. In a dangerous situation like this, only by keeping a clear head can I find a way to survive. A thought flashed through my mind. I quickly pressed a series of buttons on the dashboard. Beep. The dashboard lit up. I held onto it tightly, knowing that everything was riding on this choice. Compressed air charging. Charge time, 9.5 seconds. The starseed's voice rang out in my head. I breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, even though the ramming and rapid acceleration functions were broken, the vehicle's weapons were still usable. The base vehicle wasn't just a ramming tool, it was also equipped with weapons. When the modification was completed, I had received all the information, but because the apocalypse hadn't happened yet, I didn't dare test them. And when the apocalypse started, I was only focused on running for my life, so I simply didn't have the time. Now was different. This was a real battle. Failure meant death. The base vehicle's air cannon could compress up to 500 atmospheres. The initial muzzle velocity reached 810 meters per second, more than twice the speed of sound. During World War II, there were air cannons powerful enough to shoot down low-flying aircraft. Only their accuracy didn't meet the requirements. I didn't know how effective this cannon would be when fired at a mutated wild boar. The shockwave of the air was very strong, but it still paled in comparison to live ammunition. There were explosions that sent people flying dozens of meters, yet some still survived. So whether this cannon could kill the monster in front of me, I wasn't entirely sure. More importantly, I only had exactly one chance. It needed a full 9.5 seconds. Any longer, and the car would be flipped. Let's risk it. I gritted my teeth and pressed another button. The air cannon slowly extended from the front of the car, its muzzle aimed straight at the wild boar's belly. This type of weapon was hidden within the vehicle's body, only revealing itself when in use. Looking at the 60mm diameter barrel, my heart pounded. Countdown initiated. 9, 8. The starseed's voice rang out, each number feeling like a judgment of fate. Where should I aim? The throat? This wild boar had thick skin and tough flesh. I didn't doubt its defensive capabilities at all. It seemed like every part of it was terrifyingly sturdy. 6. The base vehicle tilted a bit more. Clatter, crash. Due to the increased incline, the pots and pans in the back started sliding and crashing around. I gritted my teeth, turned on the autopilot to maintain speed, unbuckled my seatbelt, grabbed a wrench, and sprang up from the driver's seat. You stupid pig. Die! I roared, smashing the wrench hard against the wild boar through the windshield. Bang, bang, bang. The glass was already cracked, and small shards rained down. This action was practically useless, but the wild boar was a wild beast. Being provoked, it instantly flew into a rage, its glowing red eyes locking onto me. 4. The countdown was almost up. The pressure felt like it was crushing my chest. Suddenly, I pressed the door release button, kicked the door open hard, and leaned my whole body out. This action looked no different from suicide, But right now, I was incredibly clear-headed. Most of the vehicle's weight was pressing down on the tusk wedged underneath the chassis. The front of the car was lifted, but at the same time, it pinned the wild boar down, making it hard for it to turn its body. If it wanted to change direction to attack me, it first had to pull its tusk out. At that moment, the car would drop down, all four wheels would grip the ground, and it would push straight into it. Therefore, in these few short seconds, I was safe. You stupid pig. Die. I gathered all my strength, aimed straight for its eye, and threw the wrench. The wild boar couldn't dodge in time. The wrench struck it. Though it missed the eye itself, it still hit the nerve-rich area around the eye socket. Roar. It bellowed in fury. The sound shook everything. The sonic wave hit me, nearly throwing me out of the car door. My heart almost stopped beating, my mind going blank. But amidst that chaos, a voice still rang out clearly in my head. Die. My eyes were bloodshot. Fighting through the dizziness, I controlled the air cannon via the starseat, aiming the barrel straight into the wild boar's mouth. Right at that moment, it opened its mouth wide to roar. The cannon's muzzle was practically pointed straight inside. Air cannon. Boom. A violent explosion rang out, like a thunderbolt detonating right on the ground, deafening and earth-shattering. The airflow, traveling at 810 meters per second, far exceeding the speed of sound, created a supersonic blast, erupting into a massive surge of energy. The base vehicle was violently pushed back. The windows rattled fiercely. The shattered pieces of bulletproof glass fell, only to be blown away by the airflow, shooting out in all directions like bullets. The air exploded, forming a localized vacuum. The pressure spiked, then plummeted to near zero. The water vapor in the air instantly condensed, forming a giant cone-shaped pillar of mist the size of a house, which was then propelled straight forward by the airflow at an unimaginable speed. As the base vehicle was thrown backward, the scene ahead was practically obliterated. Makeshift houses collapsed, trees were torn apart, and roofs were blown away. A tree trunk as thick as a man's thigh was snapped in half, all its leaves vanishing in the blink of an eye. But that was merely the aftershock of the secondary airflow, because the vast majority of the true destructive power had been absorbed by the mutated wild boar. The wild boar's 10-ton body was hurled into the air. The terrifying airflow surged straight into its lungs and stomach, causing its massive frame to swell up like a balloon about to burst. Immediately after, the horrifying pressure, nearly 10 megapascals, found an exit from the rear of its body. A deep, muffled explosion rang out. Fresh blood, mangled flesh, and fragments of internal organs spewed straight out the back, shooting dozens of meters away, erecting a brilliant red pillar of blood in midair. That pillar of blood slammed straight into a makeshift house like a falling iron hammer, directly crushing the entire building. The power was too terrifying. I looked at the destructive masterpiece of the air cannon, an indescribable horror rising in my heart. At this moment, the base vehicle was still on autopilot. After crashing heavily back down to the ground, no longer hindered by the wild boar's pushing force, the car began to move on its own. I hurriedly turned off the autopilot and slammed on the brakes. The four wheels were already heavily damaged, especially the rear ones. Due to the intense friction, they were scorching hot, billowing smoke accompanied by a burnt smell. Even though the base vehicle's wheels were tougher than normal ones and had internal air pockets for dispersion, after that collision and the terrifying drag force, they were still severely damaged. I opened the car door, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from my body. The battle just now looked like a showdown between the base vehicle and the mutated wild boar, but in reality, my mental and physical stamina had also been pushed to their absolute limits. I looked ahead. The scene before me still made one shudder. Before firing, I never expected that an initial velocity of 810 meters per second could create such terrifying destructive power. However, at the end of the day, compressed air was still air, even compressed to the absolute limit. When it hit the wild boar's bulletproof-like thick skin, the impact force was still largely dispersed. If I hadn't fired straight into its mouth, it probably would have been hard to kill this monster. I picked up the wrench that had fallen on the ground and stumbled toward the mutated wild boar. Looking at the blood, minced meat, and intestines scattered everywhere, my heart couldn't help but clench. Too gruesome. This pig had literally been blown to pieces. I stopped about 10 meters away from its corpse, not daring to get any closer, just in case it twitched before dying completely. At the same time, I didn't dare stray too far from the base vehicle, lest zombies attracted by the noise swarm over and I wouldn't make it back in time. When shouting on, I called out loudly, but the inside of the car was completely silent, without any response. My heart suddenly tightened, and I immediately rushed back to the base vehicle. When Xiaotian was still strapped tightly to the seat by the seatbelt, her eyes shut tight. Her forehead had been hit, and a patch of blood was seeping out. How did this happen? I hurriedly checked her breathing. Fortunately, she had only passed out. Looking at the wound on her forehead, I shook my head. Probably during the collision, the unsecured pots, pans, and bowls had flown around the car and struck her, knocking her unconscious. If there had been a few more collisions, those things might have actually taken her life. That was close. I breathed a sigh of relief. I went to the storage compartment and grabbed some gauze, preparing to bandage her up, when right at that moment, a familiar voice rang out in my head. Base vehicle damaged. Damage level, 3.5. Requires 200 kilograms of steel, 100 kilograms of copper, 30 kilograms of high molecular organic plastic, 1,200 liters of gasoline, and 200 kilowatt-hours of electricity for repairs. Repair time, 24 hours. Hearing this, I was stunned for a moment, then let out a bitter laugh. The base vehicle was damaged, but at least it could repair itself. It was just that the required materials really wouldn't be easy to find. Organic plastics, especially gas and electricity. In the apocalypse, gathering enough of these is no easy task. 1,200 liters of gas. That's almost a ton. What a gas-guzzling monster. I looked at the fuel gauge, my heart aching. After constantly ramming and firing the pneumatic cannon, my gas was almost completely depleted. I had less than 20 liters left, not even enough to cover another 100 kilometers. If I ran into a zombie horde along the way, the consequences would be disastrous. Just as I was stressing out, the system's voice rang out again. Successfully eliminated level 1 mutated monster. Detected level 1 mutant crystal, located in the monster's heart. Extracting it will unlock the first evolution for the mobile base. Detected mutated monster meat. Can be consumed directly to enhance physical constitution or used as raw material in the biological laboratory to trigger biological evolution. I froze. Mutant crystal? Biological laboratory? What the hell were these? The level 1 mutated monster was obviously that wild boar. So, the crystal was inside its body? And the biological laboratory? I hadn't seen anything like that when I first finished modifying the mobile base. Right at that moment, a soft click echoed. I turned around and saw a delicate slot pop open on the control panel, just big enough to hold a ping-pong ball. It was my first time seeing this mechanism. A thought immediately flashed through my mind. The mutant crystal. In its heart. I grabbed the dagger I'd bought earlier, hopped out of the vehicle, and approached the boar's corpse. It was lying on its side, leaving the area around its heart completely exposed. Without hesitation, I swung the dagger and plunged it straight into the mutated boar's heart. Its hide was incredibly tough, but not as impenetrable as I'd imagined. This mutated beast had managed to collide head-on with the mobile base, making me think it was completely invulnerable to blades. Originally, I was even planning to scavenge a hacksaw from the auto repair shop next door. But to my surprise, a small dagger was enough. It took a lot of effort, but I slowly managed to cut through its thick hide. Perhaps after death, the mutated boar's flesh underwent some sort of change, losing the iron-like toughness it had while alive. The thought crossed my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The system did say that mutated beast meat was edible. If it stayed as tough as rubber, who the hell could even chew it? Being able to carve it open without exhausting myself was a blessing. I carefully sliced open the mutated boar's chest, located its heart, and meticulously extracted it piece by piece. Before long, I was completely drenched in blood. Normally, fresh pig blood has a strong, foul stench. But strangely enough, this boar's blood didn't stink at all. On the contrary, it actually gave off a faint, pleasant aroma. This was clearly no ordinary blood. I thought about it for a second, then grabbed a few plastic buckets from the nearby diner and quickly filled them up. Finally, from deep within its heart, I extracted a gem about the size of a quail egg. It was crystal clear, smooth to the touch, and still radiating a faint warmth. This had to be the mutant crystal the system mentioned. I took the crystal back to the mobile base and carefully placed it into the newly opened slot on the control panel. With a soft click, the crystal locked into place, and the metal slot slowly slid shut. Instantly, the system's notification chimed. Mutant crystal successfully installed. Mobile base has unlocked its first evolution. Please select an evolution path. A holographic screen materialized before my eyes, displaying a list of options and their descriptions. Option 1. Unlock Level 1 Spatial Fuel Tank. Capacity, 10 cubic meters. Explosion-proof and bulletproof. Upgradable. Option 2. Unlock Level 1 Spatial Storage. Capacity, 10 cubic meters. Low temperature, hypoxic environment. Preserves fresh food for over a year and mutated beast meat for over 3 years. Option 3. Unlock Level 1 Auto-Absorption Function. The mobile base can automatically harvest materials via particle beam, eliminating the need for manual transport. Option 4. Add a 20-ton capacity mechanical arm. Option 5. Add a fuel-based flamethrower. Consumes a large amount of gasoline. Combustion temperature of 2000 degrees Celsius. Option 6. Upgrade pneumatic cannon. Option 7. Upgrade vehicle armor and bulletproof glass. I kept scrolling down. Below the sixth option were several other choices, but they were all grayed out and unselectable. However, one specific item caught my eye. Option 10. Unlock biological laboratory. By supplying materials, it can synthesize genetic evolution fluid to enhance the user's physical constitution. Unlock requirement: 2 level 1 mutant crystals. My eyes instantly lit up. Genetic evolution fluid? Enhancing my own body. That was incredibly tempting. In this post-apocalyptic world, it wasn't just animals that could mutate. Humans could, too. Even with the mobile base, my own frail human body was a fatal weakness. If I died, it was all over. But if I could enhance my physical stats, my chances of survival and combat capabilities would skyrocket. But unlocking the biological laboratory required 2 mutant crystals, and I only had 1. I'd nearly lost my life just taking down this level 1 mutated boar. Hunting for another crystal right now was a pipe dream. I had to take things one step at a time. My priority was evolving the mobile base. Upgrading myself would have to wait. In this brutal, apocalyptic wasteland, I had a lot on my plate. The biological laboratory was off the table for now. Right now, the most crucial thing was unlocking the most urgent functions. Upgrading the fuel tank was an absolute no-brainer. The current tank's capacity was way too small. With a 10 cubic meter spatial fuel tank, I could store 8 to 9 tons of gasoline. Whether I was driving into combat or firing weapons, I'd have peace of mind. I wouldn't have to worry about dying a stupid death just because I ran out of gas. The spatial storage was incredibly tempting, too. The mobile base didn't have enough room as it was. Leaving all this mutated boar meat behind would be a massive waste, and the storage space could even preserve food. It was basically a mobile granary. As for the other upgrades, the vehicle armor, bulletproof glass, auto-absorption, new weapons, or even just the mechanical arm, I wanted them all. Without the mechanical arm, just figuring out how to move this 10-ton boar was a massive headache. But I could only pick one. After weighing my options, I suppressed my greed and locked in the first choice, upgrading the fuel tank. The spatial fuel tank was the only thing that would guarantee my immediate survival. The other upgrades could wait, but fuel couldn't. The mobile base needed repairs, and the 1,200 liters of gas required far exceeded my current capacity. Not to mention, all future combat functions relied heavily on fuel. Without gas, everything else was just a pipe dream. Gritting my teeth, I selected the first option. The system immediately chimed in. Fuel tank upgrade selected. Upgrade requirement: 100 kilograms of steel. Upgrade time: 2 hours. My eyes went wide, and I nearly smashed the control panel. Steel again. Why does everything need raw materials? I thought having the crystal would be enough. Who knew it was just the bare minimum requirement? I still had to scavenge for the materials myself. But thinking about it, it made sense. How could I upgrade a fuel tank without steel? But the problem was, where was I supposed to find steel? There were plenty of heavy-duty trucks around, made entirely of the stuff. But dismantling them and hauling the scrap back to the mobile base was going to be a nightmare. If I had unlocked the auto-absorption function, this would be a breeze. I could just activate it and suck all the steel right out of those trucks. But I couldn't afford to waste this precious evolution just for the sake of convenience. I had to find steel. I had to upgrade the fuel tank. But what the hell was I supposed to do with all this mutated boar meat?